All right, we back with another one, peoples. So today we doing a little something different, right? We're gonna talk to my homeboy Rain right here. He has a whole lot of experience going on with, just reptiles in general and other different communities as well. So, Rain, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? What your history is in this reptile world.
Appreciate it, man. Appreciate you guys for having me on. So yeah, I'll say it pretty much started. The exotic started for me in 1988. Believe it or not, I was 7 years old. I started working in a pet store. I was volunteering. So I had moved to DC, right, and my aunts had established these youth programs for the kids during the summer, so that they try to keep them out of trouble, give them some jobs and things like that. So me and my cousin volunteered like kind of where we wanted to, and we would get paid through programs. So there was a pet store called Animal Hut that was like right around the corner from the headquarters, and I remember my cousin said it. So my aunt, she walked me down there. And the only thing I'd ever seen, like I'd been on my family, I come from a family of farmers. So like I started whelping litters when I was like 4 and 5, helping them out because they were crossbreeding dogs trying to make a better herding dog for the farm. So I'm very, very familiar with farm animals at the time, but exotics, I hadn't seen much more than like a garter snake or back home in Brazil when we first got here, like the most common snake back then is jararaca. So the bothrops. So they're everywhere. But or some frogs or something like that. But yeah, coming in the States, it was I didn't see any of that cool shit until 1988. So they walked me in the pet store, and the first thing that I see, ironically, being on this channel, is there's like this 200-gallon tank, and it's full of like every species of Europlatus you can think of. Like me, I no clue what these things are. I know they're geckos, but I'd never seen anything like that. I mean, from the smallest to the biggest, they're all in this tank. I remember it vividly, like walking in that store, like even talking about it now, like I can see it. Like it was because it was such an experience for me. Like they walked me in there. I don't even know if these people are going to let me work in there or not. My aunt's talking to the guy, and I'm looking around and, walking through the place, and they got birds. And I noticed they had Madagascar day geckos running around in the shop. And so the story behind those is they would eat all the loose crickets. They let them out on purpose to eat all the loose crickets in the shop. And they had this pond there with these koi fish in there. And so, I was excited. And so she's like, yeah, they said you can stay here. And then she just left me. You know what I mean? Like I'm just in there. I don't even know these people. I'm just like, right. So I'm like, all right, well. And so the guy's son, the owner's son, comes out. He's a few years older than me. He's probably like 4 or 5 years older than me. So they take me in the back. And so as I'm walking through, they've got, at this time, there was no Reptile magazine. I think Reptile magazine didn't come out until like 93, like October of 93, the first issue dropped. So, there was some aquarium magazine. And I remember walking past it. They had a macaw, and then they had some supplies. And then you go into the back, and it was like real dim. And then there were all these cages, like these windows just built like 3 sides. And then there was this door. And they had they had like mammals here. Then they had some birds here. And then they had all the reptile stuff here. And then on this side, they had this tall, it's like something you would think of for maybe like a tree monitor type of enclosure. And it had a pool in there, and they had this big boa in there. Now I had seen plenty of boa back home before, but honestly, I didn't know people kept those things. So but I'm in the States now, so I'm like, okay. White-lipped pythons. First time I ever saw a white-lipped python was walking through there, and I didn't see them immediately. They had 2 cages that were covered with newspaper. And so they take me in the back, and I saw this rat snake. I didn't know what it was at the time. They take me in the back. And so they introduced me to this guy named Mark. And then I noticed there's this table back there. There's this wooden table. And then there's a door. And then there's a back door. And then there's steps that go up to, they had saltwater fish up top. And there was another guy, a little short, tiny, little like, I don't know the proper term, but like the shortest guy I've ever seen in my life, like working in there.
Just a little person.
Right.
Just a little person.
Right. Yeah, this little buff black guy just comes down the steps and he's like, walk. And I'm just like, and I was a short kid. I'm still short. So, I'm like, me and him are like, kind of seeing eye to eye. And so they go and they grab these two buckets, and then the buckets, they're mice. They're live mice. And this is my first day. I haven't been in here 10 minutes, right? And so there's just all these mice in the buckets, and they're like, "You ever stunned mice before?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I don't even know what that is. Like, this is like outside of a mouse on a farm. This is the first time I've even seen a mouse like this color in person." So they're like, "All right, well, we're going to show you. This is what we do. This is for the people that come in and they want frozen thawed mice." So they were picking the mice up and they were slamming them against that wooden table, stunning them, throw them in a bag. Put them in the freezer. You know what I mean? Like, that's what they were doing. So I'm like, all right, so I start stunning the mice with them, throwing them, I'm talking to his son and whatnot. And I go in the freezer, there's all this shit in there. And then I remember this big Parsons chameleon. It had to be like that big. It was huge and it was in there. I guess it came in and maybe it died or, I don't know what happened to it, but I just saw it in there and I was like, man, that's crazy. I have no clue what this thing is. I've never seen that before. And so as the time went on, like I started learning so much from this guy, Mark, man. Like I said, it introduced me to white lips. I saw types of red tails in there. Kenya sandboas. First time I ever saw Kenya sandboas is in there. And I worked at this shop for about 3 years. Yeah, till about 80, 88, 89, 90. About 90, 91, I think I stopped working there. So back then I had no idea who was even really supplying them because, most of the people that I would come to know of later didn't start until like 93, 94. But obviously, I mean, we've been messing with reptiles since the 1840s. So, but some interesting stuff was coming in there. And, I was never able to get my first snake. So I started with inverts and geckos. Like that was the only thing that my aunt would let come in the house. So, or anoles, all types of anoles. Man, I probably had 1,000 anoles. Man, the things that lived for like a month, and then every single one of them.
Oh yeah, all those feeder anoles.
Every single one of them. House geckos. Man, I probably had I don't know how many house geckos. Tarantulas, scorpions, hamsters, gerbils. Those things are evil too, man. The little hamsters and those gerbils. Those things, they bite. Dude, I had so many. Like so many of those things, man. Newts. Then I finally convinced her to let me start getting some newts and some salamanders. Frogs. Like I fell in love with frogs. Especially like tree frogs. Like I fell in love with tree frogs like early on. And then around like 92. Well, around 90, I started hearing about this green tree python. Back then there wasn't a lot to see. There wasn't a lot of information even be had. Like I said, Reptile Magazine didn't come out until 93. So, you hear about stuff like, I was hearing about bolins, but I didn't know what that was. I'm hearing about, Dominican mountain red, all these names. And I'm like, well, dude, where are the pictures at? So that was the thing back then is, and I mean, you guys are the same age as me. So if you were into reptiles from anywhere from 80s to late 90s, like they got it so easy now. Like we didn't get to see anything that we bought.
No, it was just a list, right?
Right. You got it. And it took you like 4 or 5 days to get the list. You have to call and then they send you the list and then you get it. And then you never really know what's on the list because from the time you call to the time the list arrived, it's definitely, dude. I'm on the where the snake is in his house. Yeah, you see. But so the prices were definitely different. A lot of the species that we see now that are popular were around then, but nobody was really, I can't really say what anybody was buying or what was popular back then because I was so new to it. And I wasn't, like I said, I was so limited in what I could even get and there was nothing really advertising it. But at around 90, I started hearing about green tree pythons and then eventually I saw a picture of one. And I bought my first one like I think it was either 90 or 91 or 92 from that pet shop. $500. I took me 2 payments to get it. Like, like I said, I was still kind of young back then, but doing work over the summer, I'd save up some money. That wasn't the first snake that I bought, but that was the first, like, I guess in the sense, like, real, as some would consider like a real snake. I had like corn snakes and king snakes, which I love, but an expert animal. And it was sold to me as a Wamina, which I would later learn to come that there's no such thing as a Wamina locality, but that would be way, way, way later on. But that's what it was sold to me as. I didn't even know what the hell that meant, and I didn't care.
Oh, it was a cool ass snake. That's all it was to you, man.
It was like so like chocolate. It was almost black, and it had white diamonds and red eyes. Like it was, and the way they were keeping it, like that's what the information. It's so funny how some of the information has changed on animals from back then to now. Basically the way that they were being told was what I did, because that's what they told me, and that's what I saw when I went there and bought it, was like certain death for the animal. But that's what we were being told, even though you find out later on when you do deep dives and you start to travel, like why would you keep this animal like that? You didn't even catch it like that. You know what I mean? It's like, but that's what the experts were saying. So when I went in there, it was in a 10-gallon tank with a pothos plant, and it was like 2 inches of water, and it had a coat hanger that they had fashioned in the cage. That's what they were doing. That's what it was. And that's what everybody was doing. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, so, because let's see, like in 79, Trooper Walsh, also in the DMV area where I grew up in DC at the National Zoo, that's where he first hatched them out. So that's where a lot of the information was coming out of DC about the animal. So that's what everybody was doing. And I guess some people, everyone was having different varied success with what they were doing, and they were just learning as they went. But I took it home and I did the same thing they did. I got it to eat one time, and then like 40 days later, I came home from school and that thing was floating in the water.
Oh shit!
Like it didn't last long at all. But like I said, like I couldn't even tell you like the temperatures and all that they told me back then. Like it was because the information was just so sparse, man. And so I became obsessed with that animal. But it wasn't that easy to get because, like I said, Bushmaster didn't open up until 93. So they didn't start really bringing green tree pythons over until I started seeing them on price lists at like 94, 95, around that time. And then that's when your ball python hit albino. So they started going crazy. Burmese were popular, iguanas, different types of tortoises, red tails. But the Guyanans, like all you really heard about back then was like Colombian and Guyanan red tail. Like that was it. Every once in a while you hear about like a Brazilian. But I was seeing like anacondas coming in every once in a while, saltwater sharks, things like that coming in at some of that's back when we had real pet stores. And there's some that are still alive now, but not many. But back then I remember, I'll tell you a funny story, right? So I ran away from home because I hated the person that I lived with. Like I just did not stand this person, and we just didn't have a good relationship. So in high school, I ran away, and I was all over the news and shit, dude. I thought it was funny. But how I acquired the money, dude, I started selling reptiles like back in 94. Like when they gave us the internet, there was a guy that I went to school with, named Eric Macklin, and he was like real computer savvy. One of the guys who was real computer savvy. Like I didn't have access to the internet at home, but I had access to the internet at school. And so that's how I was seeing like when like Bob Clark's website went up and things like that in the mid 90s, like was the computers at school. So this guy, like, I started wholesaling reptiles in 94. Kind of. I wasn't really wholesaling, but that's what you would call it. the way I was doing it, I was using like Tom Crutchfield, Glades Herps, Gulf Coast Reptiles, Diamond Reptile Importers at one point, and a couple more, because what they were selling the animals for was still a little bit different than the retail value. So I would get blood pythons for like $50, $60, and then I'd sell them for like $110. And so how I did it, like I used the client money to get everything. I didn't use any of my own money at all. I'd have them pay me up front for the price of the animal plus the shipping, and then they give me the difference when I got the animal. Like that's how I started doing it. And then my buddies joined in. Some of my buddies joined in, and we were selling like some stuff to like even some of the local shops, but we weren't really making a lot of profit. It was like 4 to 5 of us at one time splitting like $300 profit. Like it wasn't a lot.
It's an awesome hustle for a kid, man.
Oh yeah, yeah, especially for a teenager. Yeah.
So how I got the money to like run away, because I left the state. You know what I mean? Like, so was from there. So where the school that I went to in Maryland, right up the street from it was one of these pet stores. And I went to a Montessori school, and we could leave. And if you were in high school, you could leave for lunch. I mean, this school was like $30,000 a year to go to. Most of the kids drove better cars than the teachers, like that type of deal. So we had a lot of leeway at the school. And it was in the school even further at the reptile thing, because it was in the woods. You would have never known that there was a school back there. Like you drive past this place a million times and it's just so heavily wooded. I mean, they had archery programs, they had horses, we had ponds on the property, pools. So you could be sitting there, fox come, doing your work, fox running by, like anything. But we would go out like every lunch break. Me and I remember my homie Kurt, Eric, my homie Craig, man, we'd be out there catching frogs, snakes, like, falling. I don't know how many times I fell in the creek and had to go back into class like that. You know what I mean? Like getting chased by the geese out there. Like, dude, there's a picture of me in one of the yearbooks getting right before I got bit by a copperhead. And the lady I was working there during the summer, right? And I was working there during the summer, and there was one, like I said, we had 2 ponds up there. So one was big enough for us to have a few canoes in. So we were in there with the kids, and I had 2 kids in my canoe, and we're sitting there pedaling, and I just see these bands break water. Like I said, dude, like I really like animals, you know what I mean? But especially like reptiles. Like I'm like snake crazy. And, I just saw these bands break the water. And so like I'm like pit bull, like go mode. Like immediately, like, dude, I didn't care about those kids in the canoe or anything. Like I immediately like step out of the canoe, like, and grab the snake, not even thinking water snake, copperhead, like whatever. I just grab it, and the snake turns and bites me right here. Like it was a dry bite, luckily. But when I realized what it was, and so one of the parents just happened to be there and snapped a picture like the moment it turned, and that shit went in the yearbook. Like it was the funniest thing to see that. Like that's like just how like animal crazy. Like it's like my entire this is I've never not done this. So what's up?
This is in Maryland?
Yeah, Maryland, DC area. Yeah. So
I caught my copperhead in Delaware.
Yeah.
I caught my first. I was like 12
They're
years old.
everywhere, dude, in that area down there. We got a lot of rattlesnakes there too, man. A lot of timber rattlesnakes. So yeah, like like I said, that school fueled it even more. And then, just the traveling and things like that. Like I would get to see a lot, especially at that school, because so we only went to school 4 days a week. And then we had what was called an extended study day. And then we had an extended study week. So during the week, we would all like meet somewhere or drive somewhere, get on the bus and go somewhere for like a field trip or whatever. And then twice a year, we would have extended study week where you could go anywhere within the country or out of the country, depending on what they were offering. And I guess how much your parents loved you or you weren't pissing them off at that time. So, trips to like Ireland, Japan, and, like Australia, like, all these things. So having that resource there allowed me to travel and, meet people and stay in contact with them, because I already knew this is what I wanted to do. Actually, I had an opportunity to go to a school in Belize for herpetology, but my aunt, she didn't support this at all. because in her mind, there was no money. You know what I mean? They're looking at herpetologists like, man, they ain't making no money because in her mind, like, you're going to pay me back for taking care of you since your mom didn't do it. You know what I mean? Like, it's not about what you want. It's about, so I knew that growing up. So I had to fight that. And even my cousins would be like, dude, man, it's just a hobby. You're not going to make any money. You need to consider doing this, that, and the other. And they're all lawyers and doctors now. And like the minute I turned 18, like I went to apply for a permit to get, like to bring stuff in and out of the country. Like that was the first thing. That was the first thing on my mind. Like I had that application filled out like a month before my birthday. And, seeing that I had already traveled, I already had a passport. So saving up the money that I had made from selling the snakes on the side, like I started, that's how I started kind of trying to move around. And then at 18, I could get better jobs. In between that time, I also volunteered at, that's another funny story, the botanical gardens in Southeast DC. They kind of made me volunteer so that I wouldn't get in trouble because they caught me stealing animals out of there 3 times. I'd go in there with a bag and, if I had a snake hook, at times I'd take it. Sometimes I didn't have a snake hook, so I just go in there with the best stick I could find. I'd go in there during the early mornings or mid-afternoon when I knew stuff would be out. And, sometimes they'd catch me and sometimes they wouldn't. And on the 3rd time, they're like, dude, like, what is your deal? But you know what I mean? I'm like, dude, I can't help it. Like my aunt, she won't buy me any of this stuff. You know what I mean? Like she won't let me have but so much. And when I do, like, I was also like hiding snakes under my bed and in my walk-in closet, like at this time. Like, yeah, luckily DC had a metro. So I didn't necessarily, if you grew up on the East Coast, so I think both of y'all are really from the East Coast too, right?
No, I'm from down south.
Oh, you are from, okay.
I'm from Texas.
Yeah, I know all about it, man.
So, yeah, we're out. They push us out the door. You know what I mean? Like, we're out. Like, you'll see, like, 8 and 9-year-olds on the train, like, going home. You know what I mean? So,
come home.
Yeah.
On.
Yeah. So, I already knew how to take the train and the bus. So, I would just, back then, there was no ship your reptiles. Like, there was Delta Dash. That's how you got your animals. So, I'd take the train to Dulles. Or to Reagan Airport and go walk around the Delta Dash. I remember the first time I had to go there, I got lost for like an hour. I couldn't find it because it's always in the oddest place. And I'm walking. Right. I'd never been there before, but that's what it was. So yeah, it was definitely interesting. But yeah, like I said, she wouldn't get me into this stuff, so they caught me in there, and they're like, "Well, look, we really don't want you to get in trouble. So how about we got a class here where we teach adults. Well, we really don't know that much about this stuff. So why don't you come in, like once or twice a week?" And I was like, yeah, you're gonna have to talk to my, my aunt. So, they told him what was up and she agreed to it. So for a year, I taught at 13 to 14, I taught adults from the ages of 25 to 40 about all the local like reptiles and everything, everything that I knew about. So, like I said, there was nothing else in the world that I wanted to be. And the fact that I was able to do these things, but at the same time, I was telling him, like, but you're not going to do these things professionally. Like, this is just like right now. And I'm like, yeah, that's what you think. But yeah, everybody recognized it. Everybody, everyone at school, like everything. Like, dude, if you come to my house, I don't know if you've seen any of the other podcasts that I've done or anyone that may watch this on animals at home. I talk about the walls in my room. I got in trouble with the library because all the books that I would check out, the dog books, the cat books, the bird books, the reptile books, I cut all the pictures out and I had them glued to you couldn't see any paint on my walls. Everything that I liked, I had maps with pins where I was going to go, like where everything was, like where all my favorite stuff was. And I was a video game fanatic. So everyone wanted to come to my house because I'd always have at least one cool animal. I had all the video games, and I had this cool room. And so, that's what it was. And I remember when she found out about that and they called her, she went in and there was just a stack of books sitting there. And, library books are expensive. Doesn't matter how much they cost in the store. Library books are expensive. They charge you $100 for a $5 book. So they were telling her like, yeah, it's going to be like this amount. And she's like, yeah, dude, like you're never going to get anything else again. Like, like she made me rip all that stuff off the walls. And, I was hurt, dude. I remember I cried that night. I was devastated. So yeah, like I said, it's I've been doing it nonstop. It's the longest thing that I've done. In my life of all the career choices that I've taken, because I never looked at it as a hobby. I mean, I still don't. And I honestly, I don't even like the term. I guess if you keep one or two animals, that's a hobby. But when you're breeding and you got breeding programs, like that's not a hobby. Like that's like dependence. I've said that before. Like we got
life's.
Yeah,
Man.
I think
Life in you. It's like you said, being a kid. I never talked to anybody who had the same identical passion as me, man. I grew up catching these things. That's what we did, man. It was, you couldn't see anything alive and not be curious enough to gotta catch it. I gotta catch it. I gotta know what it is. I gotta find out what it is. Like, it was obsessive, It was no place I could go. If there was something alive here, I gotta find this. I gotta find that. Or if I wind up somewhere new, the first thing I would do is look for something alive and crawling, Like, it's I can't explain. It's not a hobby. People say that about a hobby. Same thing, man. Parents, my family are all lawyers and doctors and shit, man. Come from buku money. They look at me like I'm a fucking retard because I find these things.
Right.
It's like, I don't expect you to get it, but it's me. It's more than just a thing. It's me.
A lot of them have come around and like, man, like, yeah, I'm trying to invest. I didn't know it was like that. Like, I was like, man, I tried to tell y'all, I tried to tell you guys, like, and as, as it goes on, as even though we see, I guess most of us don't see it. I guess we think that things are progressing. I know there's a blindness in the reptile world. To a lot of things, as far as, this thing coming to an end, because it definitely is. I hate to say that, but Boss has another plan, and animals are a luxury, unfortunately, as far as they see it. Plus, a lot of these transactions are done under the table, so they feel like they're not getting their just due because we don't self-regulate, which is something that's very important, because if you don't self-regulate, then they're going to regulate, and then you're not going to get anything. And, that's the message that I've been preaching for since 2017, 18. And I've gotten a lot of pushback. I've gotten, called names and a lot of things for, some of the other podcasts that I've done. And my message hasn't changed because, anybody who cares about this, how you just described it, I don't know for them to not want the things that I think that we should have already had 20 or 30 years ago. Like I've talked to, I think I might have talked to both of you guys about it, but, the insurance and like, that's important. Like, how can you want to pay for some of these animals are selling for ridiculous prices out here, regardless. And some people are like, oh, it is what it is. And I'm like, yeah, I guess if you've never imported and you've never really gone and seen how it's done, then you might be able to say that. But at the same time, I was like, dude, you know how much that animal costs before it even goes to the farm? That animal could cost anywhere from 50 cents to like $20, like American. And, then once it goes to the farm, it jumps up a little bit. And then obviously wholesale price, it jumps up. And then the retail price, it really jumps up. And then we have all these guises that the animals, what do we have? Like, USCBB, captive hatched. There's so many of them now, and we've used them over the years to mask wild caught animals. Into, like me, I prefer wild caught personally. I know that there's a need for both, but we've definitely abused it for sure. With some species more than others, we've definitely abused it. And I think that the lack of abuse is also, the abuse has come from a lack of regulation. And another thing that I've always been big on is having a private reptile registry, much like AKC, UKC, to promote proper breeding. And I have to give the gecko guys, or the lizard people in general, I have to give those people way more credit than the snake people, because I still see them doing their best to keep things unrelated. and trying to breed a specific way. I don't think that it's how it's done is totally correct in my experience from breeding. I've bred a ton of stuff, and like I said, not just reptiles. Dogs, rabbits, like you name it, birds. Like I bred a lot of different things. And there's when you're trying to get certain things or you're trying to reproduce something that you like, there's only one way you're going to get it, and that's with anything. But I do commend them on that, because in the snake world, you'll see brother and sister pairs being sold and bred, and it's been that way for a long time. You very rarely, if you go to snake ads, you'll see anything where it's like, you very rarely see unrelated. So they'll say like, oh, they'll have babies, and then I got pairs, so I had this many babies, so they'll be like, oh, I have 6 pairs. Brother and sister, people will buy them and then they will breed them. And they're being told that that's okay by experts. And I guess they're saying that it's okay because it's an excuse, because they don't want to wait the length of time to breed the animals in a breeding program. I think that's why you always hear about projects in the reptile world and never programs. And actually, I have a podcast coming out next week talking about breeding programs for reptiles.
Is that with the animals at home?
Yeah.
Okay.
So
what's your definition of a breeding program?
A breeding program, one program by definition, to compare it to the word project, a program is something that's ongoing and it has an aim, where a project it's like, as I described, the best way to describe it, let's say you want to build a computer from scratch, right? So you build the computer and you get everything and then it's done. That's your project. You did it. But in order for that computer to run, it needs a what? It needs a program, and that program is ongoing. You get updates on your phone, on your computer now all the time. So it's always, that's a program. So when you're breeding your animals, ideally, most people would start with all unrelated animals. That's how you would do it. And then from there, you're going to take those animals. And so let's say you start with a 1.2, because that's you can't do this with less than 3 animals. It's not possible.
Damn.
Yeah, I know. This kid. All right. I'm good. I'm still here. All right. So, yeah. Kids. So, what was I saying? 1.2. You can't have a breeding program with less than 3 animals. It's not possible. You cannot create a line of animals with less than 3 animals. So the easiest way to do it and to explain it is you're taking one male to 2 unrelated females. So he's going to breed both of these females. You're going to get, let's just keep it geckos, since that's what you guys do. So you're going to get clutches from each one of those, and we'll keep the numbers simple. So let's say you get 6 eggs in each clutch. You hatch all 6 for argument's sake. So you've got 12 animals. So obviously you bred this male to these 2 females for a specific reason. So you're looking for something specific. So you're looking for the phenotypes. Everything that you hatch is its own phenotype. So you're looking for the phenotypes that closely relate or resemble to what, the progenitors were. So once you kind of zero in on that, or you find what's close, you take those specific animals, and then you would cross those animals together. The males to the females to the male, whatever the ratio is, but you'd either take a 1-in-1, maybe the best 1-in-1 from each one of those clutches, and cross those. So what you've done there is that's called a line breeding, which is a form of inbreeding. But it's not I'll just explain it as I go. So that is your line. That is your first line breeding. So from there, let's say you have another clutch of 6, you take the best 1-in-1. What you're going to do with those animals is now, because the goal is to lock the genes. If you don't lock your genes, you're never going to be able to reproduce. You're just going to be producing. And everybody produces. Anybody can produce. It's like you can go get 2 dogs and put them together. You produced a litter, but did that male produce itself within that litter? And not just, it's got to be as close as possible. We're not just talking about visually, we're talking about mentally as well. That stuff's important. And I think with the reptiles, we're so visual with the animals that we don't focus on the mental. I know we don't, because we sell animals that flip upside down and slither on their backs, and, things that should have not have been bred once you saw that gene. And that's another part of proper breeding and breeding programs is, and people don't like when I say this, but for those who don't like it, then you shouldn't be breeding animals. So I have to say it, and that is you have to cull. You have to. You have to. If you care about the animal, you have to cull. Why would you want to breed, especially with reptiles, because you can't neuter or spay them? So if you sell that animal to someone, you agree that animal is okay to be bred. It doesn't matter what you told them. Once they pay for it, it is their animal. They can do whatever the hell they want to do.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of people become breeders overnight. They may have bought the animal not thinking about breeding, and now all of a sudden they want to breed, and they're going to breed that animal. I mean, it's pretty bad when you can get on YouTube and you can find videos where they have the scales from 1 to 5 of the neurological issues that come out in some of the mutations. But to keep it for the breeding program, your goal is to lock the gene, because if you got that ideal male or female that you want to see however many times, you can replicate it. You know what I mean? That's the whole point, is to make what you're doing better. And so that means you have to keep a lot of stuff, and it depends. And your program is going to vary on what you're keeping. Like if you got animals that may change color from being birthed to adulthood, then the smart thing to do as a breeder who's trying to improve his program is you can't really sell any of that stuff until it's done changing. I see the green tree python people and the emerald tree boa people and the other snakes that do that. They sell their stuff early, and then you might sell that animal that you're looking for. Like, how do you know what it's going to be? It's like selling someone an 8-week-old puppy. Like, I never let any pups leave my property before 3.5 months old, because one, I need the best stuff to either stay here or to go with somebody specific so that I can have access to it. And even with my canine program, like, you don't come to my house and pick a dog. It doesn't work that way. You tell me what you want, and if I have it, I'll call you. Maybe I'll have 2 dogs that resemble what you want. And so when you come to my house, if I got 7 puppies, the other 5, you're not even going to see those dogs, because that's not what you asked me for. I do my best to give my client what they asked for. Because if I let all those dogs out, you're going to pick the one that is most aesthetically pleasing. And then that dog's either going to be too little or too much for you. You know what I mean? And now you're going to blame me, and it is my fault because I didn't know what I was doing. So, I'm like I said, I've been doing this a long time, and I've come up under a lot of dog breeders. I'm just overwhelmed with this stuff. So I took my dog breeding knowledge and applied that to every other thing that I bred if I was going to take it that far, like even meat rabbits. So because I want it to be the best that it can be. So in order to do that, you got to lock genes. And once you get that locked gene animal, I mean, it takes a while, especially if you're dealing with babies. It can take you 10 to 13 years to get that animal. And that's what a lot of people in the reptile trade don't want to wait for. So they just inbreed, especially with the mutations. They inbreed because it's faster. But what they don't understand is there is a way, even though I'm not with the mutations at all, I think they look amazing, but I can't deny what they are, and they're diseases. That's what they're disorders. You can look it up. You know what I mean? We see it. I mean, you see it. I can't, I'm not just saying it.
They're mutations. They're non-normal, man. They're not what the animal's supposed to be. That's 100% correct. People don't get it, but we're looking for mutations, looking for non-normal things about these animals, man. You're spot on.
Right. So that matters to me. I don't want to put that back into my program. If I see something that's wrong, like if I get an animal that's doing some weird stuff, man, I'm going to watch it. And, I hate to say it, man, it's going to go in the freezer, or it's going to go to Brother Lynch back here because he likes snakes. So
what's back there?
What'd you say, Anthony?
What do you got back there?
That is a Naja guineensis, black forest cobra.
Big boyish, huh?
Yeah, he's a big boy. Yeah, that's my dude, man. I was supposed to have like wall to wall forest cobras in here, but due to certain things, like I said, I'm popular with some people and unpopular with other people. And sometimes the popular people have the stuff that I want and they don't like me. So, I can't get it sometimes, and I don't do the import thing like that anymore. So, and every time I try to put something together, certain people are like, oh yeah, man, I'm going to do it with you. And I'm like, all right, man, I'm going to put it together. And then, it never happens. So,
yeah.
But yeah, they don't want to wait for the animals to get to that point to where you take them from A to Z. But this is what you don't realize is that once you get those locked gene animals, if you did it correctly, no matter how you breed them, because you have to test and prove your shit. You got to test and prove it. I got a rule in my house. If one, I don't buy, like with my dogs, if it's from untested stock, I'm probably not going to buy it. Like if you got a hog dog, I need to see some videos of his people hitting hogs. You know what I mean? If it's a gun dog, I need to see it. You know what I mean? I got to see it. Because you want how much? Fine, the price is the price. But I got to know that's what I'm getting,
Right.
That's real, man. People don't get it. I got a bunch of buddies that live in South Florida that boar hunt, right? It's a different type of dog, man. These pups, and I don't want to say that because they don't all make it. Not all the pups make it out into the swamp, right? But you're breeding for more than a look, man. You're breeding for the strongest drive or gameness in these dogs, right? Like they want these dogs that are damn near looking for piglets when they pop out of the womb,
Yeah.
Gets better and better with every generation, believe it or not, man.
Right.
They keep taking tried and true dogs and putting them with other dogs, and they're almost bringing them back to the wolf. They're bringing the natural instinct, the prey drive back into these dogs, man. Some people could say that my dogs look this way, my dogs look that. And, we talk, man. I'm a big pit bull head, man.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I hate to say that people fight them, but if you don't got a dog that's ready to go all the time, you got, man.
Right.
I hate to say it, but
yeah, I mean, even speaking on that, I mean, because I grew up with guys who were, heavy, like my brothers and uncle, they were heavy in the game dogs, man. And, as it kind of is what it is. It's part of the dog's history. It's what makes the dog what it is, regardless of whether people like it or not. But see, even around that time, because I was into dogs heavy, as well, like, junior handler and doing things like that. But, my brother had a lot of American Pit Bull Terriers. And, we had, back then, like I said, I was even getting all those magazines, Dog Fancy, Dog World, Reptile, Aquarium, even the private publications, Pit Bull Gazette, Sport, the stuff you can't even get unless you know somebody. You can't go buy this at Borders and Barnes and Nobles when we used to have those.
Up on a tight.
Right. But yeah, it's the problem is everybody wants haste, and I think social media has sped a lot of that up. And so I think social media is
instant gratification.
Right. So I think the interjection of social media into the world, but into the animal community is definitely, I think that where there probably would have been a real progression with breeding, I think social media's interjection kind of went in and just kind of messed it up, because now it's all about being seen. Like back in the day, man, you didn't know who half of your favorite reptile breeders, experts, so-called experts were. You didn't know who, you might see them occasionally in a magazine, unless you were going to all these shows and you'd have to be meeting everybody. You didn't know who a lot of these people were. You didn't know what they looked like. You just saw them, and then as the internet came in, their websites, but a lot of them were just posting their animals. They weren't posting their, pictures of themselves and things like that. But the breeding back then was I still can remember a lot of animals being sold in brother and sister pairs and being bred that way. And I know that because I did it, because that's what I thought I was supposed to do, because that's what they were saying. And now I'm like, damn, man, I'd have never listened to you guys. I mean, there's some guys out now that are popular, and I hear them like, they make excuses because it's faster, but we're talking about huge commercial breeding. Like that's like snake mill, puppy mill type of stuff, man. Like, it's kind of crazy when some of our personalities or public figures are bigger than the voice of the reptile. They got more, like USR's got like 20 something thousand followers. And then you've got all these other people who have hundreds of thousands of followers. And I'm like, dude, that's crazy, because there's like 5 million households that keep reptiles. So I really think that we could be doing a better job. And I don't have the best reputation or relationship with USARK. I was a huge supporter of USARK back in the day, like huge supporter, because at one point in time, they were evolving into kind of what I've been talking about, is getting the insurance and getting the registration. And then that thing happened, and then they switched, who was running it. And then it just kind of went back to where it was. And, I've talked about this stuff on other podcasts. It isn't anything that I haven't said before, and it's not even bashing. It's just anybody that's been in the hobby, or however we want to consider it, hobby, the industry, the trade, as long as I have and as deep as I have, know that there's a lot missing. And if you have a place that's saying that they are the voice, then it's kind of not my position to do that myself. At least that's what I believe. Because you look at your AKCs and your UKCs and your horse registries and your cat registries, you can find stuff about insurance. They have, code of ethics. They have shows that bring in extra money, and they give away prizes, and they, educational things. And we don't really have that. We've got expos that are just buy, sell, and trade. And yeah, you might have some exhibit here and there. And like I said, it's not a knocking. I'm just saying we need to advance. Because
definitely.
If we had advanced, our breeding would have advanced too. We haven't. It's been that website's been the same ever since I can remember.
Yeah.
And like I said, I talk to a lot of people, and they're just like, I just don't understand, and I don't really want to give my money to them. And that's sad, because, we need, that's all we have at the end of the day. That's all we have. So if certain things are allowed to happen that we've seen happen, like some of the animal abuse cases and things like that, lets me know that, we're headed in the wrong direction, and the government watches that as well. And since they already want to shut it down anyway, if you really pay close attention, then you'll know that like almost every country kind of is facing the same kind of bans that we are. All the time we're deciding, do we want to keep letting them import animals? Do we not? So you already know it's on the chopping block because they're talking about it. All it's going to take is the right virus or something like that, to affect everything. And it's not, just here where I am, 2 counties were voting to ban everything, including like a lot of dog and cat breeds and all exotics, like 2 counties here.
Damn.
Yeah. So, and what people don't understand, they're like, oh, it didn't pass. And I'm like, well, it doesn't necessarily have to. If you don't know how legislation works, then they got to get it on the books. It doesn't have to pass immediately. Once they start talking about it, now it's on the books, so they can bring it up anytime they want.
They'll just slip it into another bill. Just rewrite it a little bit and say, here, let's redo these words real quick, and now we're going to put that into that bill.
Right.
So that's what they usually do.
Right, and so because we don't have a lot of structure, like proper breeding programs and someone promoting like, hey, let's not just do, because I think that there's a lot of beef in the reptile community, a lot of competition, and I really don't see why, because I can understand it in the dog world, because you have dog competition shows, fly balls, this, that, and the other, whatever type of sport event it may be. But we don't have that in the reptile show, but we do have like this toxicity that exists. And I'm like, well, we need to take that and kind of do what they do what I saw in Indonesia, and have like a reptile show. People bring their animals in. Okay, let's see. You got all these ball python breeders. You got all these crested gecko breeders, all these boa breeders. Bring your best snake in. You know what I mean? Fuck it. Why not? You can, no buy, sell, and trade. This is just, just like your standard AKC show. You go in, you see who's got what. Yeah. Because people are like, oh, what about a standard? Nature's already provided the standard. You know what I mean? It's already there. You know what the animal's supposed to look like. So who's got the cleanest shit? Everyone's always, this, that, and the other. Why not? And take that opportunity to promote a lot more education, because the only money you're spending is to get in. And then that money directly would go where it needs to go. But also having a registry, and the lizard people were more interested in what I had to say than the snake people. They were, I got hits from a lot of gecko guys and monitor people when I talked about these breeding programs. And they were all like, yeah, that I've been told the exact opposite. I was told that line breeding is this. And I'm like, no, that's not what line breeding is. Like, I know a lot of people in the reptile community think that line breeding is when let's say you breed an animal and you get this really perfect female, like you love her. And so then you take all these unrelated males and you start breeding her to them individually. That's not a line breeding. That's scatter breeding. You know what I mean? That's scatter breeding. That's outcrossing still. Until you line breeding, the animals have to have at least one common ancestor on both sides in order to be line breed. And then you have your distant inbreeding, which is how you lock your genes when you breed back to the parent. And then from there you outcross. And that was the whole point of if you did it right, you're going to up your ratio of success. So now you might see 4 or 5 males and females that look like that particular animal every clutch, and that's your goal, is to get as many as you can. That's why you don't see. Think about like with the green trees. If you pay attention to the green tree python world, because what they're doing. It's not necessarily dealing with heterozygous animals more so than crossing locality patterns. And I think that's kind of the same thing that happened in the gecko world with like the crested geckos and even with the Europlatus, is the crossing of the patterns is starting to take on effect as well, because it is selective breeding. And this is something that I brought up, and I know a lot of people are going to get mad when I say this, but I'll say it here as well, is that you are now creating breeds of reptiles. Because anytime you take anything from the wild and you selective breed it for specific visual traits or mental traits, you are in the realm of creating breeds. Before there was Presa Canario, there was Canis familiar. Every Presa Canario is a Canis familiar, but not every Canis familiar is a Presa Canario. So you know what I mean? So they started out one way and they went a different way. So it's like, they have the green tree pythons, they're trying to make them black or yellow or white. But notice you don't see an abundance of those animals. You don't see abundance of, like, everyone doesn't have a black animal or a close to black animal. It's because their breeding programs are flawed. I dealt with green tree pythons for about 15 years, man. I had about 42 animals, most of them miso locality. But I had a lot of other stuff like in between there. And I probably produced maybe 11 clutches in that 15 years. I lost 2 total clutches, one because one laid in the water dish and I was away. And I thought I was going to be back in time, and she didn't use the nest box. And so when I got back, they were, it was over. But, shit happens, unfortunately. But I'm not really into the cross locality thing. Like I said, I like to look at things, but I'm really about preservation and conservation. And if you know, like I know, you can't put the majority of those animals are not going to be able to go back into the wild. They're not going to make it.
That died.
Right. So when people who do that, those designer things, are talking to me about conversation, I'm kind of looking at them like that gorilla meme I sent you, where it's like, they're lying, but you can't, I'm just like, yeah, right, dude. Like, you selling an animal for $20,000. That is not a conservation. No conservationist can afford a $20,000 animal when they're begging for donation themselves. It's like, like, we got to stop using that. Like, we got to stop using that. That lie has gone on probably way before we've been doing this, and I heard other people talk about it recently too. And I'm like, yeah, no, it's very true. Like, people talk about, we're preserving and conserving these animals. How are you preserving albino, spider, bumblebee, het, boa? Pretty soon, the ball pythons are going to be breeding they're going to be breeding out boas. It's going to be het boa constrictor. I mean, like, what can come next? You know what I mean? Like, but I mean, dude, I never thought I would see the day. I remember when the first albino ball python hit, and then those guys broke into Bob Clark's house and stole all his shit, and then tried to sell it like a month later or something like that at a show. Like, brilliant guys. But yeah, I remember when that first happened, and I was like, oh man, but albino is, that's a pretty common disorder. You see that in a lot of animals, and you've seen that all the time. But I never thought that it would go past that. And I remember had to be somewhere between 94 and 98 when the black-eyed Lucy hit. I remember, I don't know whose website it was on, but they had the picture of it. It had the black background and it had the snake. And I was just like, man. And I clicked on the price and I was like, damn. Like, won't be getting one of those. You know what I mean? Like,
what was that, like 25,000?
It was like 20K back then, man. It was crazy. Yeah, and then like from there, I remember like the Bat Eater came out. I think the first hybrid though was like the Jungle Corn. And if I'm not mistaken, maybe that was like late 80s, early 90s, the King Snake, Corn Snake crosses. That was the first hybrid that I ever heard of, were the Jungle Corns. And I used to want one so bad. I never even got to own one. I used to want one so bad. I used to be obsessed with white lips, eyelash vipers, Echistrodon, mainly Cantil vipers, cobras, obviously, and ringneck snakes. Like I like a lot of the obscure stuff too. But yeah, man, yeah. I mean, there was just so much going on back then. Like then when I started like really traveling, that's when I really started seeing stuff, and then kind of figuring out like, okay, man, like so I've been getting ripped off, even though everything wasn't even that expensive back then. But the money was different. Inflation over time and things like that. The money was different, and now I got to travel. I'm traveling to see this, but it's not like I can just necessarily get it and then just take all this stuff back with me on the plane. I mean, I could have, because that was definitely happening back then. I mean, if you ever seen that's how, Tom and, all those guys got caught, back then when, I ain't even going to say that. I ain't going to say who, but somebody that was like at the time near and dear to the community turned state evidence, and they helped the government put together that operation, and Tom got busted. And that's when he went on the run. Pretty sure Tom owed me some money from back then. Yeah, like, that, and, back then was, like I said, like, they were just going over there and like bringing stuff back in their suitcases. Like they show the whole thing. If you ever watched the video of him on Locked Up Abroad, but, obviously they can't say who it was that, gave them the info. But yeah, they were arresting people from here to Germany, smuggling and doing things like that, which is crazy because 80% of the animals that come in this country are still illegal right now. You know what I mean? And we know it.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, I see, and it's funny like that I can even now, like if I had said any of this stuff like 20 years ago, they would have tried to crucify me, for saying this stuff. But now, like, when I see, the guy who owns Morph Market on animals at home, and they're like, yeah, we're only going to be selling captive bred, and then I see all this wild caught stuff on there, I'm like, what is the message here? Like, do we even have a message anymore? Like, we can't even keep our, like I said, and I don't want anybody to think that I'm like, I'm just pointing out, like, we need to do better. When you compare us to other animal communities, like, we are so far behind. Like, it's toxic because they got memes about how toxic it is in the reptile community. I don't make them. I don't even know how to make one of those things. I'm not that computer savvy. I wish I was, though. But, it's pretty bad here. When, like I talk to a lot of the women in the reptile industry, and they're like, they get bashed about certain pictures that they take, and I'm like, about their anatomy, and I'm like, well, they're a woman. Like, what are you not supposed to be a woman? Like, if the snake was wherever it's crawling, like, who cares? What I care about is how is she taking care of those animals? You know what I mean? I don't care about the rest of that stuff. It's not. That has nothing to do. I mean, it's social media. Like, oh, they're just trying to get attention, and you're just trying to get attention by making a video about her trying to get attention. So what's the difference? You know what I mean? Like, this is not the stuff that's important. Why do you not care that you can pay $10,000 for an animal, or for animals, or people have thousands and tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars into collections, and then your house burns down or something like that, and then you have to go to GoFundMe and beg for money? I'm not about to beg for any money, so I'm going to convince my insurance company that, you need to put all of my stuff on my homeowner's insurance. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because there's no widely available source of reptile insurance that works for all of us. You know,
Especially when you got a large collection.
Right. Like I said,
right?
for the hobbyist, the person that's got
For the
3 or
pet
4
people.
animals, the pet people.
Yeah, the pet keeper.
It works for them.
Pet keeper. Yeah.
And I also feel that, you know, it is my obligation at this point, because I've already spoken out about it, is to continue, is because I'm the only one who's been speaking out about it for the last 7 years. It's like, why haven't they got us insurance? Like, why am I the only one trying to get us insurance? Why am I calling my people that I know that work for State Farm? And you know what? And I'm going to say this again on record. We had an opportunity to get insurance via State Farm, where they were going to give us a chance to look at it. And they asked me to do one thing. And they said, if what you're saying is true, then if you can get us 1,000 signatures, because my homie worked for them. And he said, if you can get us 1,000 signatures, then we'll have a sit down with you and we'll talk and we'll see. And I couldn't even get 1,000 signatures. And it wasn't,
that's crazy.
And it wasn't like it was, you know, I understand I don't have the best reputation because of some of the things I say. And, you know, I don't follow industry standards, but it wasn't just me. I had 4 or 5 other people that were helping me, and you can contact them and they'll tell you. Like, dude, the excuses that we were getting were crazy. Like, one guy was like, "Oh no, I'm good. I got smoke detectors. I got fire." I said, "How is that gonna?" I said, "If you're on vacation and your shit catch on fire, like, what? How is that gonna help you?" Like,
what's that smoke detector gonna do?
The fire company's not. The firemen aren't gonna let you go in, and they're not gonna be worried about getting your snakes either.
Can you insurance on your dog? Like, I have pet insurance for my dog, but, like, could I get, I don't even know what it would be called. Like, God forbid something happened to him. I paid
It's just exotic insurance.
Yeah.
There's a couple of places that'll do it, but it's just individual instead of like a big group. Because I mean, like you said, how many geckos you got, man? You got a fuck ton, right? Yeah. So I'm saying, like, try, like, it'll be like $15 a piece on trying to on your geckos.
They'll give
so
you
that's
like
way too much money.
Right. They give you like a 10% discount after a certain number, but it's still a lot. You know what I mean? But that's gonna be more than my car insurance. But you can definitely put your dog on your homeowner's insurance. All you got to do is just call your company and tell them you want to add them to your homeowner. I mean, I got Precious, so I got liability insurance, because just today my dog got a hold of a cat, took him out for a walk because I had a showing at my house, and I didn't even see the cat. I never see it. See, my dog, man, he doesn't bark. He just hits. You know what I mean? Because that's what I like. You know what I mean? Like, he just hits. And I didn't even see the cat, like, at all. And by the time I saw it, like, they were wrestling. You know what I mean? And he had it, and when he got off, he had a scratch on his eye. He was bleeding, and I'm just like, you fucking moron. But, but yeah, there's a lot of stray cats and stray dogs. And I live in a tiny mountain town, like in the mountains. Like, I'm talking about like bear, like be coming into town, like that type of, like, deep in the mountains. And there'd be dogs. Like, we've had like 11 dog attacks. Like, random dogs have just run up on us, and, you know, he's crushed them all, like from Rottweiler to Schnauzer. Like, because with dogs, it's not always about size; it's about age sometimes. You know what I mean? So a little older dog can have a lot of heart. You know, gonna get it cardiac arrested, but but they got heart. You know what I mean?
Sound like some chihuahuas.
Yeah. Now, we had a Rottweiler run up on us one night. People were out looking for their keys, and their dog was out. He wasn't on the leash. It's like 12:30, because I walk him at night to try to avoid that. Because there's more dogs in town than there are people. This is like tiny town. There's like 15,000. There's like 15,000 dogs and 4,000 people in town. So,
God damn.
Yeah.
I was like, why?
So, and I used to have 4 presses here at one time, but yeah, this dog runs up on us. You know, it's dark. My dog's a red brindle. You can't see him at night. Everybody knows what a Rottweiler looks like. You know, black and tan at night, dude. I just felt a pull to the right, and by the time I was getting ready to yell at him, and because he already pulls, and I hate that shit. And by the time I saw it, I just saw this black mass just coming towards us, and he lunged, and my dog just like dodged him, and he just left his neck, everything just wide open, and he just pushed him in the pavement in ragdoll time. And the owner starts trying to grab my dog. I'm like, dude, grab your dog. Don't grab my dog. Like your dog's the one who ran over here and started this shit. But no. And afterwards, you're like, dude, what kind of dog is that? Like, man, I've never seen anything like that. I'm like, yeah, man, he doesn't.
I told you, man, that's my dream dog, man.
Yeah, he don't.
I just find that breeder that makes my jaw drop. You know, I've seen the specimens that make my jaw drop, but I haven't seen anyone that could produce them time and time again.
Yeah, you gotta go to my man in Uruguay.
I love dogs, man.
Yeah, my man in Uruguay, in my opinion, he's got the best presses in the world. Uruguay Presa Canario, man. Shout out to Uruguay. That everything is tested and proven on hogs. You know, everything. Like his dogs are, yeah. He's got 20. Uruguay presses
before they're born, right? He sells like picks.
Yeah, and it's not even that much. Last time I talked to him, I think he was wanting like 17 to 2,500 a pup. I mean, you'll pay $5,500 for a presser here that's untested. You know what I mean? Because just the way they buy dogs now. Like people want these big dogs, and I'm like, I don't care about that. Like the presser.
Oh yeah, I paid $1,000 for a pick. I paid a pick at a litter, but I paid $5,000 before a dog was ever born. The second they confirmed the pregnancy, I gave the rest of my money for on top of the down payment, and it was all up in the air. But I trusted the breeder. I trusted the dogs. I trusted the lines. You know, it was the bloodlines that I wasn't going to pass up, you know. I mean, but the look of the dog was a gamble, I guess. But when you have faith in a breeder, someone that produces and consecutively produces dogs like the guy you're talking about, the money is obsolete, you know.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And that's where we need to get to more in the reptile community with everything. But like I said, in order to do that, we need the structure that we don't have, man. We need that. We need to see that. So like I said, the people in the gecko people, I see you guys doing like, I mean, I'm a gecko head myself. Like I love geckos, you know, like I love especially leaf tails. Like I don't like the Aussie ones so much, but I love leaf tails. But I think probably my favorite gecko is the most basic gecko you can buy. I've been seeing them sell for like $200 now. And that's the flying gecko. Man, I used to get those things wholesale for like
dirt cheap, like a couple bucks.
Yeah, I've seen them anywhere from like $25 to $150, and I'm just like $150 for a. I was like, man, I used to get those things for like $1.25 wholesale, like back in the day, man. Like, when I love flying geckos.
At Petco, when I went to go buy something at the pet store, and it's the first time I seen them since back then, since probably the 90s, man. They had them in a Petco, man, for like $60.
Yeah, you see a lot of stuff in Petco, depending on the demographics, man. I rescued green tree pythons from Petco. You know, I've seen some stuff in there before, some crazy stuff. I'm like, dude, why? Like, what did somebody order this, or they just came across the list, and you know? So yeah, you see some crazy stuff in Petco and PetSmart.
Yeah, but talking about the structure, I mentioned the gecko thing. David from Geckos. I don't know. I'm sure you know who David from
Yeah.
He started that thing called the Gold Standard Gecko Club, where they keep track of the lineage. They have a set standard for structure, no imperfections or
yeah, a lot of the lizard people
things are acceptable. So he's trying to set the ball, you know, because in the gecko world, people will sell breeding quality animals, right, for X amount of money, and then they sell their non-breeding quality animals for less money. You think that those people ain't taking that animal with this that you're saying shouldn't be bred and breeding it? The kids and the young people out here with money are like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go and get one of their non-breeding geckos for cheaper money, and because it has the same lineage, I'm gonna breed it and I'm gonna good geckos. When all actuality, I've done it, man. I've done it. I thought I got, one up on them to myself. You produce hundreds of geckos that aren't worth breeding, man.
Right.
You're not doing any justice.
Right.
You're doing nobody any justice by selling non-breeding quality animals. I mean, like dogs. You wouldn't go and take a fucking Pressa with a short leg and born with hip dysplasia or some shit, and be like, that's my stud. You're not.
Right.
You're not.
Right.
You're going to have him snipped and maybe passed off to a pet home somewhere at very best.
Right.
You know what I mean?
No, for sure.
I mean, you know how most dogs got here? They were cold.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Like, if you didn't fit what we're looking for, there's no room for you in the program.
Right.
So a reptiles is kind of, you know, I look at it, fortunately for me and unfortunate for a lot of people bash me for it too, but I don't believe in breeding anything that's not going to one-up itself, right? If it's not going to make better than what it is, and you cannot fix, build, or at least keep the animal to nature standard, right? To its what it's supposed to look like naturally, you're not doing anyone any good by sending out shit, man. You're sucking the hobby dry. You're poisoning the hobby with terrible genetics.
You're breeding where you see a lot of dumb animals being bred because of how they're being kept as well. You know what I mean? And the excuses, and a lot of people says, "Oh, that's all they know." Well, that's all they know because that's all you gave them. If you take your kid and you put this motherfucker in a room and you feed him pizza every day for 10 years, you try to give him a burger, he's gonna be looking at that like, "What the fuck is this? Where's the pizza at?" You know what I mean? Like, where's the pizza in my dog bowl at? So, like I said, like, you know, and when you say that to certain people, you're the bad guy for saying that. I'm like, but you wouldn't let your kid live like that, and you're one of the big names. So I feel like you're supposed to be setting a better example. And you know, a lot of these guys are getting praise, and I'm just like, you know, I gotta. You know, it's like they were saying when all that terrorism shit started in DC and all over. If you see something, say something. Well, I'm telling, goddammit, because. I'm telling, because these animals, they can't speak for themselves. You know what I mean?
No.
So I'm telling, because, you know, if you don't, then who else is? So you can say what they want about me. Like, you know, I'm not snitching. I'm telling you, anybody can see this, anything that I've done. You know, look, it's pretty bad. You know how I ended up on Animals at Home? I've been on there 3 times now. And you know, Dylan invites me back every year. Well, the first year I came to Dylan, look, I went to every major podcast that you know that deals with reptiles. Every single one of them and I can get people to tell you what I'm going to tell you. This was back in 2018. So no one even knew about the Competes Act back then. Because they were still writing it up. I have a friend, you know, that sits in the Senate. So he told me, he went to high school with me, the same school where I was going. He went to school with me. And honestly, I never really liked this kid because I knew he was going to be into politics. Like, I knew you could see him and you know, I mean, he's not a bad guy, you know, by any means. But, you know, he told me some things that were happening. He was like, well, if you do this and this, then you can beat it. And it made sense. And he was like, yeah, you just think of all the money that you could bring in. You know, it costs money to go to war. You can't fight legislation on donations. You know, everybody, I think U.S. ARC's treasury is in Rockville, Maryland, if I'm not mistaken. So, you know, like I said, I've been pretty close to this thing. You know, so he's like, you know, if you do this and this, like you'll stand a chance. And I was like, well, that kind of makes sense because if AKC, UKC, FCI, ABDA, all these dog, cat registries, whatever, they're making, like AKC, for instance, they register now, I think it's 170 breeds on the average registration price. And we're just going to take everything that they do, that they offer, their service, and we're just going to put it into an average number. And, you know, we're just going to say it's $20. $20 a registry. For one register for a single registration. And then don't forget you have litter registrations too. That's a totally separate price. AKC alone in 2019 registered almost 90,000 golden retrievers. Like we said at that number, $20. You do the math.
Right.
2022, they registered 2 times the amount of these fake Frenchies that you see out here. The fake Frenchies that are, if you got one of those, I'm sorry, they're not real. Those are breedbacks because Frenchies don't come in Merle and all those other blues and tries, and they don't come in those colors.
Okay. All right.
Not real ones, not real ones. So yeah, I don't care what your breeder told you. Go read the standards. French bulldogs don't even come from France. They're English, and they came into France with the seamstress, and then the ears of the dogs changed, and then that's when the Americans took them and brought them over here.
Yeah.
But yeah, so if they registered twice that amount of French bulldogs, you do the math. That's only 2 breeds. I just told you they register 170 breeds, and that's on open registration. I don't even know how many they do on FSS AKC.
A lot of money.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's tens of millions of dollars a year. There's more species of reptiles and amphibians than there are dogs. So just imagine if you could get all of us, to register at $5 a registration. That's probably $100 million a year. U.S. ARC would never have to ask for another fucking donation again. Because one, you're providing a service that we need. You're hooking us up with insurance through these companies. You have this registration that's promoting breeding and things like that. But for some reason they don't want to do it. And I have had them, and they know who I am because they've gone on other podcasts that I've been on. Their administrative assistant or whatever she likes to be called. I don't care about what your title is. I only care what you're doing. That's what's important to me. I don't care who you are or what your title. What are you doing? But and I tell them, like, dude, go watch the podcast yourself. Like, these are the people that represent us. And I'm not saying that USARC hasn't done things, because they definitely have. Even before Phil took over, they definitely have. But legislation has evolved and we have not. So while we get mad at PETA and they're like, oh, fuck PETA. Well, PETA says fuck us too, but then they go and fuck us. They actually do it. The fact that even if the bills don't pass, that's still money that had to be spent to go to, you know what I mean? So in the sense, if every year there's 4 or 5 bills that they're asking for donations for, that we're not winning. But in the sense where you have, because PETA, they write checks. Look, I used to volunteer for PETA. I got bashed for this. If you saw the second podcast I did for Dylan, I had to go and talk about this because I was on another live, and I brought up that when I was in high school, I volunteered for PETA. Now, I didn't know that it was going to be PETA, and we only had 3 options, and the options were women's rights, political campaigning, or animal welfare. You already know which one I'm doing. It ain't no question. You know what I mean? So I like women, but not more than animals. So politics, I could care less about that. I'm not even old enough to vote. So, you know what I mean? But none of us knew that it was going to be PETA or what. I didn't even know what PETA was back then. And so they went out and we campaigned with them to get credit hours to graduate to the next grade. So they didn't even have a choice. These guys tore me apart. He worked for PETA. Don't trust him. Like, he's trying, he's got a hidden agenda. Yeah, they were literally saying this about me. Like, under the comments on Dylan's post, like, and some of the guys that were saying that were in my DMs prior to that, kissing my ass. Like, oh man, what you're doing is great. We really need this. Da-da-da-da-da. Like, oh man, if I start going down the list of names, you'll be surprised some of the names that I've talked to about this. People are like, really? 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 And they didn't? So I don't know if there's like a self-sabotage going on, because listen, and I have to explore every option because you have to. Any wise person would. And the reason I say that is because you see how high the prices are on reptiles? Every quarter, the prices go up. Every year and every quarter, they go up. So imagine what happens when they really do start banning more and more stuff. And whatever you have, their prices are going to skyrocket. And if it ever gets to the point where there's like this underground market, I don't know if you ever watch, I don't know if you guys are into anime, but if you ever watch, what is that, Big O, where the guy had the robot, but there's a scene in there where they find this cat. And this place is like all like it's post-apocalyptic type of shit. So they find this cat, and he's like, yeah, and in order for anybody to have a pet around here, they'd have to be like, very wealthy, has still been able to survive through the aftermath of what happened, because everything is fucked up. Like, not anybody would just have a cat. If we ever get to that point, just imagine the wealth of how much these animals would be worth, because there's when they're gone, they're gone. These aren't it's why I pay attention more to exotics than I do to canines. Like, I don't love dogs. I like them, but I don't love them like I love exotics. Because when they're gone, they're gone. Like, the Presa Canario is a reconstruction of a dog. No one has real Presa Canarios anymore. That dog almost went extinct in the 1970s, and they reconstructed it based off of old programs. See, originally, before it was a breed, it was a type of fighting dog. That's all the dog was used for, was fighting dogs and getting rid of stray dogs on the island. That's what the name Presa implies: to grip, to catch, to fight. So in the 1960s, after they banned dog fighting and they started bringing over other breeds, they stopped using. Obviously, they weren't fighting dogs anymore, so the need for the Presa kind of went downhill. So you only had a few farmers that still had the dogs, because the dogs are capable of herding and doing all types of things. They have a very high IQ, very independent dog, very hard-headed. I hate to say hard-headed, but that's the best way to describe it in common terms. Like, you got to tell them 2 or 3 times. You got to yell at them sometimes.
Yeah.
Anybody who tells me they got a Presa and they're like, oh, he's just so obedient and he's this and he's not. I'm like, yeah, I don't know what kind of dog you got, but that may be an American bully, but that ain't no Presa. You know what I mean? No, if these dogs don't know who's running the house, they're going to take over the house. If they think you're soft, if they think you're soft, they're gonna check your paycheck when you come home. Like, you said you worked 40 hours this week. This is 36.8. What were you doing?
Yeah.
I know you don't get them kind of breaks. They're gonna take over your house. But so the dog declined, and they had like a dozen of pure Presas left. But the thing about the Presa, there was never any real blueprint to breeding them. There was a foundation dog called the Bardino Majoero, which is like, it looks like an ugly, scruffy, like stray dog that you would see on the street somewhere. But they're ferocious, but they're primitive. So because they're primitive, like the Spits and other breeds like that, no matter how you breed them, you're going to get that influence because, they've just been here for so long. And, because the original Presas go back to the 15th century. They started crossing this dog. So they were fighting these dogs, these dogs that were native to these islands. And then because it was a port for slave running, and they would also keep, if the islands got an interesting background, they would keep the people who they thought were able to use magic, the African slaves, that they thought were like the shaman or, whatever that they particularly called them. They would move them. Yeah, they would move them to that island, and they would keep them prisoner there so that they couldn't, cast any spells. But they also fought a lot of dogs on that island. Like a lot, it was a port for trading and things like that. So a lot of ships from a lot of places would come, and they would come with their dogs, and then they would fight. And so the dogs that started beating the Bardino, they started buying those dogs and started crossing them into the Bardino to make better fighting dogs. But everyone did it differently. The only thing they agreed on was it had to be 50% Bardino. So no matter what else you went into it, so when they started reconstructing the dog, they started doing the same thing. They took the Bardinos that they had, and they started breeding them with like Neos and Dobermans and Amstaffs and Filas and all kind of other dogs in no particular order to get specific phenotypes. And because, like I said, you're dealing with the primitive breed, it always gave the Presa this distinct look of the raised back. It's cat-footed. It's the only, outside of the Fila, it's the only other dog that's cat-footed. So it moves like a cat. It's higher in the back than it is in the front. And its head at rest is always held below the neck. So my neighbors have come and knocked on the door like to make jokes. Like, bro, like when I had the 2 brothers in here, when your lights are on, you can see through the curtains at night. And they would be walking, and they walk with their tails up like cats. And they're like, dude, it looks like you got 2 big pumas or mountain lions just walking through your living room. Like the way they're just so slow and majestic. But so it's a reconstruction because those original dogs got swallowed up in the breeding program because obviously they were already so old and they can only live for so long. And that's how you got the Presa. Well, it's the same thing. Like we said, when you start taking animals from the wild for selective breeding, you are now breeding specific, and like you, me, whoever, you got breeds of geckos, snakes, whatever, because you're doing this first, especially with dealing with the mutations. Like those are now breeds of animals, because a dog cannot really survive in the wild. Drop a pressa in with a wolf pack. Most likely he's going to start fighting because that's what they do. And then those wolves are going to kill him. So, end of that dog. You can't, the makeup is different. The genetics are totally different. He's not going to survive out there for very, you might get one or two to break the mold. But generally it's not going to happen. So it's like, since like you can't put those dogs back, you can't put those snakes back either.
Fact.
Hell yeah. So let's go ahead and talk about some of this import-export stuff, right?
He's really trying to get me in trouble. No.
Yeah.
No,
I'm just trying to say, where all were you doing it? Yeah, I know. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah.
Starting off with like bringing in a lot of rainbow boas, ETBs, like hell. Back then, like I said, the prices were crazy. Like just getting stuff now, even at retails for $500-$600, sometimes even more. Like Amazon tree boas, emerald tree boas, anywhere from like $5 to $20. Getting imports from Africa, or even if you're piggybacking on somebody else's stuff, like bags of ball pythons, bags of blood pythons for like $40, buying like 20 or 30 of them at a time. I used to get the bags of ball pythons, and you'd open them up, or bloods, and they'd just be covered in ticks. Dude, like, like it would be just so bad, and you'd sit there and just like pick, and half of them wouldn't even eat. More than half of them wouldn't even eat. So, most of them are going to die anyway. You couldn't even sell most of what you're getting. But yeah, as soon as I turned 18, like I was like, I'd been waiting to go, and I had already been overseas, so I kind of knew some of the places, lay of the land a little bit. So, like I said, I started off in South America, and then meeting up with some guys down there, but not really getting things from the farms, just kind of running into trappers as you go through certain places and you go into the markets and you see animals for sale. So you start inquiring, and sometimes you got to pay them a little bit to talk to you, and, things like that. And my experience was a little different in certain cases, is because like I'd always get told is you don't see a lot of, they don't know that I'm mixed, black men or black people coming in looking for animals, reptiles and things like that to bring back into the States. Especially when I started going over to Asia, and, Indonesia. If anybody knows the history of Indonesia, like, hell, the past and the present of Indonesia, they've been kind of doing a number on the Aboriginals over there for a long time now. And some of it's based on the reptile trade and the palm oil trade and the clove trade and things like that, because those are the highest exports. But all in all, those people are black, and those Asians had a problem with that. And they also had, if you know the history of Indonesia, when they killed somewhere between 500,000 and 1 million of their own citizens just for political differeces, in a short amount of time over there. So it's a very volatile place. It could be on one day and off the next day. So even traveling through there, at times is like, super dangerous. Sometimes you're trying to get somewhere and like, you're not coming this way, so you got to turn around. You're like, your whole trip is derailed, in certain parts. I was talking to Dan Malari, somebody that I talk to, I don't want to say often, but we talk enough because he's over, he lives over there now, and he's over there a lot.
Yeah.
So I send, since I don't do anything much anymore, I send a lot of my clients to him, but we're always talking and trading stories. Like, and Sherry's like, yeah, dude, I was like, damn, that's crazy. The same shit happened to me, when I was over there. But finally, like getting to Asia from South America and not really dealing with these guys who were like specifically like could get you a couple animals. And then you have to get them to the person. So it's like I'd go out with them sometimes and they'd catch them. And I remember the first time I went out, man, they were bringing empty water bottles, the water bottles that we drink out of. They were bringing they had like bags of empty water bottles or a crate full of empty water bottles, different sized jugs and shit. Like, what are they doing?
Sticking the snakes in there and shit, tightened up. Yeah.
What are they doing with these bottles? And so, we get out there, and that's what it was. They were catching them, and they, coax them into the bottle, the frogs and whatnot, throwing them in there. Maybe pick up some moss or something, push it in there with them, or a wet paper towel, pour some water, and then they put them back in the crate and let them be out there for hours. Sometimes you catch a little, sometimes you catch, not a lot. And, then from there you think like, oh, you're just gonna, because now the rules had changed a little bit, because certain things had happened. People have been busted doing things. So now this is when the farms are starting to kind of come to life at this point. Like I said, because like 93, because this when I'm talking about when I left, we're talking about going into 2000, 99, 2000. 93, that's when the farms kind of started establishing themselves, I guess, a little bit more for like open trade. Because like I said, Bushmaster didn't open and start advertising until Reptile magazine came out. But I'm pretty sure like that's when they were also established. So how long that particular area had been there, I don't know prior to that. But that's kind of where I kind of took follow after that, trying to see what they were doing. And it was hard to really get any information because no one wanted to talk to you, even still to this day. I think I'm probably one of the people who get asked the most about importing because I'm the person who is willing to really talk to anybody about it. And so everybody's like, well, how do you do this? How do you do that? Where do I need to go? I'm like, how do I get my license? What's this IATA thing? And I'm like, you got to know all that stuff. You got to have extra money on hand because sometimes you got to pay them, to get stuff out. And, it just depends on the situation and what you're doing. And I said I had to learn, all this stuff like, with nothing because I had no clue what I was doing at first. And I got ripped off. So how many times shipments I paid for stuff and it never came. I get together, right I get together $4,000 or $5,000, and because of that, slowly, like a blacklist would come up. The more the internet got deeper into things, like blacklists and things like that would come up, and then you would get what you call now Eddie, Father Blue, because he's from DC too. He's a good homie of mine. Because the both trips that he's gone, I know he's getting ready to go back, but I've been helping him. For a while, because he came, he's like, bro, like these motherfuckers won't tell me shit. He's like, they won't help me do anything. I was like, bro, everybody says that because they know once you go over there and you see that emerald tree monitors only cost $10, they know that you're going to start trying to think like, okay, well, I got to get in league with one of these farms, or I got to find somebody who was able to get them out. Because not every animal that comes through here comes off a farm, and that's kind of how it started for me. Because I didn't know where the farms were. So I was dealing with guys who just, you getting them through customs, or they have certain things and they have certain priorities, or they paid for certain things so that they can do that. Or maybe they're saying they're a farm and they're really not. I don't know. I don't know all the logistics of how they do, what they do. But I learned quickly about some things, and so I said how those letters are thrown around between captive hatch and farm bred, and because it's like after 72 hours, it's all farm bred. That's the law. So it's funny. It goes from wild caught to farm bred to wild caught when it comes back over here. Sometimes, you know what I mean? Like I was like, dude, that's so interesting. Like, wow, why not just? But then I started figuring out like, oh, because it can't come over here unless. It has to be within that building parameters for 72 hours. And then it can be considered farm bred, and then it can leave. But it's also just not as easy as... But listen, people, if you want to import, it's easy to an extent. It's easy to get the information. You look up... The easiest thing to do is just go to the country that you want and look up what is called... they have a codex. And like I said, Father Blue can tell you, because I sent it to him, the one for Indonesia, and it's got every single importer that imports everything, not just reptiles, not just animals, everything. And it's like a 400-page, depending on country, it'll be however many pages. You go and you look this up, the information that you want will be there. Don't try to do this from over the phone. You're going to have to go over there. You know, like I'm telling you, you have to go over there. So if you're thinking like you're just going to call them and set up some stuff, it doesn't work like that. It kind of did a while ago, but that's how you get ripped off still too. No, you got to be willing to go over there because one, you don't already know how many people are pulling animals from this specific place anyway. So maybe it's not even really lucrative for them to take you on because most people want the same stuff. You know what I mean? You're going to probably ask them for the same stuff they're already moving. You know what I mean? And they don't have enough of that as it is. But they will lure you in. Like they got bolins for 1,000, bolins for 700, green tree pythons for 300, you know, or whatever, or even less than that. And so you go over there, and then they only got like 2 or 3 of them, and their minimum is like $5,000 to $10,000, maybe more than that. You know, it could be all the way up to 20. It just depends. So now you came for green tree pythons, you can only get 3, and they're only $300. So you got to fill a $10,000 order with a bunch of shit you don't want, and you're probably not going to be able to sell. And you know, it's not like you're getting animals from all over the world. You're getting animals from a specific location. So maybe you don't know anything about those animals. You're not set up to take care of them. So what do? You know what I mean? So you got to think about that. You know, what's going to happen if what you want isn't there? You still have to try to establish a relationship with them because it could take a while. And it's not just as easy as let's say you go over there and you make some headway, you get them to talk to you and they bring you in, you know, and they start showing you. This is when quotas come into play. But quotas always don't come into play. And this is something that they don't tell you. When you start talking about quotas, that's when that's when you're talking about higher prices. You're not talking about quotas. You're seeing things that are very low price. I think I might have showed you a video of a guy a trapper over there that had a bunch. Did I show you that with all the bolins, the baby?
Bolins?
Yeah, there was like, I tried for a long time to get him over here. But, you know, at the price, like I said, I would have bought them all, no hesitation. But finding people that have specific permits to do specific things, everybody's not allowed to touch a Bolin's python, and those snakes are specifically supposed to be captive hatched or captive bred coming out of a farm, or if they get a grab it female who had laid a clutch. So if that trapper can't get them to the farm, then they get sold locally. Some of them, maybe they'll get put back, but, you know, it just depends on who you're dealing with. So you see that all the time. So like I said, it's not just as easy. You think you're going to go over there and do this and do that. It doesn't really matter how much money you have, because let's just say you plan to spend $10,000. Make sure you have a few extra thousand in your pocket, depending on how long you're going to be over there. If you're going to try to come back with the order or what, because you may get stopped. They know what's up over there. Mm-hmm. And also, you'll get a better idea of how long you've been lied to over here.
Oh, yeah.
You get a good idea of, and I'm talking about with like locality animals and things like that, because they're not stupid over there. They got internet too, even in the jungles out there. They got access. They
still
to
got
internet.
Phones and stuff.
They know what's popular over here. You know what I mean? So if Jayapura is the most if everybody's saying they want Jayapura or they want this or that, then everything they catch, scrub python or green tree python, it's going to be a Jayapura for the most part. You know what I mean? And they're going to want a premium for that shit. And the shits don't need the shits be from Tamika somewhere, Fac. You know, somewhere like that. You don't know because you weren't there. That's how the whole thing with like Wamena. Like Wamena is a town. It's an airport. There's an airport there. I didn't see any green tree pythons there. I mean, there's areas around it, but from what I understand, that's not even really considered Wamena. So when you're talking about locality of Wamena, there is no locality of Wamena. You know, some people will argue there's no locality of Manikwari, that Manikwari and Sorong is the same. And, you know, we've gone by things that man has created rather than always using it's like, I talk about this in this podcast I got coming up. It's like, does the science really matter when you really think about it? Because everybody doesn't respect it. You know, they respect parts of it. Like you got some people I used to say exnathic, people are like, no, it's xanthic. And I'm like, well, really, to me, that sounds like the same thing, honestly. Or some people, I hear people say, you're a platypus. And I say, you're a platypus. But you say platypus, you don't say platypus. You know what I mean? So who knows? It's like zebra. It's zebra. It's not zebra, it's zebra. It's not France, it's France. You know what I mean? So does it really matter? Most of this stuff is someone's last name anyway. But it's like the Green Tree Python guys, they don't like to say Morelia. So they say, it's always going to be chondropython to me. Or even like some of the Bolins guys are like, it's always going to be Morelia to me. But if you take a Bolins and you put it to a Morelia, you can tell that those are not the same species, like by far. But so if you can do that, does the science matter? Does it matter? At the end of the day, does that shit even matter? You know what I mean? Because if that's like you're kind of disrespecting somebody's hard work. And then it kind of makes sense that if you're disrespecting somebody, I mean, think about it like this. Here, we don't even have to take it that far. You go to any reptile taxonomy database, right? And you'll see from where we started in the 18th century, how many times one animal got classified. 50, 20, 30, 40, 50 times. So-and-so went down there in 1820. He called it the boom boom daba. Then Anthony went down there, and 10 years later, he called it the shabadoo. I went down there 6 months later. I called it the wabadoo. You know what I mean? Like, does it, so does it matter? Or are we going about this all wrong? At the end of the day, I just think we're at a standstill in the reptile community, man. Honestly, I think we're at a standstill, and we're dealing with the most evolved animals on the planet. There is no animal, in my opinion, that is. I don't think reptiles can evolve anymore, personally. I think they're to the extent. I mean, you look at a dog from the 18th century, you look at a bull terrier from 30, 40 years ago. It looks nothing. It looks like two totally different breeds. But you can take a reptile from 200 years ago, a retic, and look at a retic now, and it looks exactly the same. So if there are still evolving, which I guess anything living is still evolving, it's just to the point it's so slow that you're not even noticing it. Or maybe it's mentally, it's internally.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, don't think that, like I said, it's easy to get the elements you need to import. It's easy to get the permit. You don't always necessarily need the permit depending on what you're dealing with. You don't always necessarily need a broker. Some of you are brokers. I'm a broker for different things. So if you know how to do that, then you don't need to pay a broker. So if you don't, then you're probably going to want to have a broker. So most of the stuff is kind of handled on one end, and then there's stuff that needs to happen in the middle. But for the most part, you just got, if everything is smooth when you go pick up, when they're checking everything, it should be fine. Sometimes it can take 10 minutes. Sometimes you could be there for 2 hours, while they're doing their thing. So it's easy to get the elements that you need. Make sure you've got extra money on hand. And like I said, don't think that you're just going to go over there one time and it's going to happen for you, because it's not. It's going to probably take you a few trips, and like I said,
you got to establish those relationships, right?
And you got to kind of battle with other people, like I said, who already have stuff set up over there. Because why break off why give you something this guy's already buying just so you can get this, and now the rest of this stuff, like you said, now you're buying stuff you don't even need, and you're not even set up for it. So unless you're a shop or something like that, and you can take on those animals, but if you're just trying to get stuff for yourself, like, I'm going to do one import for myself, you better have some homies that are like solid, that are really, really going to do it. And every exporter is different. Their minimums are different. Some guys will export you stuff like a $400 or $500 order. It just might cost you $2,000 to get over here. You know what I mean? And some of these guys will also have brokers. They generally do, that will come, and you can even, and it's generally at your expense. It's almost always at your expense, and they'll come and they'll go through the whole process with you and, show you what's up. But yeah, you go over there, you establish a relationship. Finally, you get what you want. Then from there, getting things back here, I would say that you should do what nobody is really, really doing, and that's health checking your animals. I don't know if we don't really want to health check shit in the reptile world. And I understand some things are harder to do than others. You know what I mean? We've got some pretty small species of animals, so it's understandable. with some things. And so I think we rely on captive breeding to be the health check. That's how I feel about it. And in some, go ahead.
I was going to say, protocol. What's the customs? Is there a customs protocol for like diseases? Like if you were to go over there when you're catching stuff and send it, and nobody has to do like
there's no vet checks or anything
or nothing like that. They just,
I mean,
you gotta do it on your own.
Going back now, it's been a few years since I've done an import, so don't quote me. And I know some regulations just changed recently. But yeah, back then, no. Sometimes going out of here, yes, depending on where you're going. Some places will want, they're harder on dogs than they are on reptiles. Which to me is crazy because I'm like,
man, it could be, as good as it is bringing new blood into the hobby, it could almost be catastrophic. If you took a virus or something from who knows where and brought it over.
It's like Nido. And some of the other things but I don't know if anyone even, I don't know, and don't quote me on this. I know a good deal about Nido, but where it actually comes from, I don't really know if it came from the wild or if it came from captivity. Because ball pythons and green tree pythons, and it just doesn't it affects a lot of other snakes as well. A lot of those snakes have gone transcontinental. They've gone back and forth. Like some ball pythons that have come here, their babies have gone back over. They could have had Nido and sent it back over there or brought it over there when it wasn't over there or vice versa. I don't really think anybody knows because by the time they just started talking about it, I don't even think it's been 10 years yet. And you have a lot of people in the hobby who are in denial about it. Like I heard somebody say that it was a government conspiracy. That's what they thought. It was a government conspiracy for green tree pythons.
I don't think they care that much about green tree pythons.
Not something specifically. Now, maybe for everything, I could buy that more than one specific. Like, what do you guys got against green tree pythons? You know what I mean? Like,
right? Yeah.
But I've heard people who just assume their animals are clean, and then I've had people come to me and they never heard of a Nido or a Nido test, and I'm like, did you ask them if it was Nido tested? And they're like, what the fuck is that? And I'm like, okay, so they didn't even mention that to you. I said, and this is another thing. Our standards for selling and come on, listen, people watching, you guys, you tell me if I'm making this stuff up. How many people's pages or ads have you gone to that advertise having healthy animals? I mean, where it's written.
Yeah, what do you mean? Like saying, oh, this is perfectly healthy animal.
These animals, you see it a little bit, but I'm saying you don't go through, you see it, you go look at someone's dog page or their cat page or their, and you see it, even if they're lying.
Well, they try to make that sound.
Right, even if they're lying, which a lot of them do, it still says, because some stuff you just can't get away with. And it's like, if you buy a puppy for me, okay, and this is, okay, and I know you guys have seen this on those guys on Morph Market. I don't need to say their name because anybody who fucks with geckos has read it, where they're harboring sick animals until you buy them from them. It says, if you are not willing to treat this animal, do fecal.
Oh, yeah.
Why do you brought this animal over here? So
I already know who you're talking about.
You telling me that you are basically have an animal that most likely does have some parasites or something like that, because it would only make sense, that you have imported. Because I've gotten animals that come in and just be, you give them Panicure or whatever, and they just shit out a ton of worms or whatnot. And I've had stuff come out of the mouth and.
Yeah.
But yeah, when they're really, really, really full. But yeah, how are you holding on to animals and you're not treating them? So basically that means if that animal sits there for 6 months and you're just feeding it, when I get it, it could die the next day.
You're going to have to do it.
Yeah, it could die the next day.
You're going to have to go.
Right, because that point of how long it's been, that 6 months, that last day could have been the turning point for that animal. Why would you bring? So that's like you buying a dog from me, and it don't come with shots. I ain't giving it shots or nothing. No, that's my responsibility as a dog breeder or as an animal breeder
Yeah.
to health check. So why? This doesn't make sense to me. Why do I have to do it? Doesn't he? You can get a tube of Panicure. They're geckos. It only takes a little bit to do it. I keep that stuff on hand, and ultimately, I can't think of the name of it right now. Another thing that kind of pisses me off, and you probably heard this before, and I've said this. I think I said it on Dylan's thing. I hope I did. If I didn't, I'm glad I get to say it here. I can't remember. I smoke a lot, but I hope that I said it. I hope that I said it, and that is, if we keep saying that reptiles and birds are so closely related, which I do not disagree with that, why the hell are we using farm animal products to treat them when we have avian products? All my reptile medicine and products I buy from the avian store online, and they will sell me Baytril without a prescription. So there you go, people. Like, I'm giving you. You don't always need. If you look hard enough, you can find things. But people have hit me up like, bro, what dewormer do you use? And I'm like, yeah, I go to this website, and I can give you guys a link to the website.
Yeah, definitely shoot me that link after this.
So you can put it up and whatnot. People want to go there, and they've got the powder dewormer. You can put it in the powder, or you can spray it on. Put it in the spray bottle and spray it in your cages, especially if you got geckos and things like that. And yeah, my dude's like, yo, bro, that shit worked great. He's like, I'd never even known about that stuff if you hadn't told me. I'm like, bro, I don't understand why we're using like horse dewormer. And I'm not saying that stuff doesn't work, because it does. But after a while, like I said, like, I guess we're just not thinking. When you think about how the hobby is, like, I think in the 80s and 90s and probably in the 70s too, I wasn't there in the 70s, I think we were more so trying to replicate nature's standards and standards of habitat for nature than we are now. Because when that tub kicked in, like, everyone was just like, oh, well, newspaper, dog bowl. For quarantine, that's great. If you're in a situation where, you like me, like I got a group of spear points back here, even now we back here. These cages, in my opinion, everything in my opinion is way too small. Even when you give them a room, I'm still like, when you start seeing these animals in the wild, you kind of like, because for a while I stopped keeping animals. Like when I started going over there and like, going on these treks and these hikes through the jungle and seeing, I just kind of felt bad for a little while. But yeah, I think everything is too small. But yeah, when the tub came into play, like people just stopped spending less and less money. I think in the lizard community, especially when you're dealing with certain species, you're almost forced to have your stuff set up a certain way. You can't just put down newspaper in a water bowl, you know what I mean, and a stick.
It's not ball python, right, man.
Well, ball pythons don't even get a stick. What are you talking about?
No.
That is way, you just said a cuss word. Don't ever say that out loud. A stick.
Yeah, that's mental stimulation for them.
I feel so sorry for some species of animals in captivity, man, because they're living in these tubs and they don't get, like, the only stimulation they get is when you pull out the drawer and they give you a dead mouse. See, I don't even like frozen thaw, honestly. I don't. I like my stuff to be as wild as possible. Like, everyone's seen pictures of me freehanding cobras and shit, and I don't do it on a regular basis, but sometimes when I'm checking my animals, in my opinion, I feel like if you can't handle your animal without a hook, then you shouldn't have it, because sometimes the hook can hurt you more than it can help you sometimes. This dude is like 10 and a half foot long. The hook helps sometimes, but not all the time. And those gloves, you're going to get bit with those gloves. And those gloves, they don't stop it. I've seen people stick pins straight through them. I'm not paying $400 for that. So, I a lot of the times I have to just go in there and I get him, and then I put him in the tub when I need to get in there and clean. But yeah, I just feel like we got to do better. But I think because of certain things that have come in, like I said, we just started to cut corners. And when you start trying to tell people, like, man, why are you doing that? You got to do this, do that. Like, nah, man, that's because the pros are still doing it. Like, yeah, bro, they're keeping their animal. Like, the only stimulation it gets, like I was saying, is the drawer, a dead mouse, and some coochie. That's it. That's it. That's all it gets. Yeah. That's all it gets. And it just sits in there. No, like, how could you think that's okay for this animal to sit in the dark for 95% of its life? I wouldn't buy, that's why I don't buy them. I would never buy a ball python I don't buy from anybody that has a rack system that uses it to keep their animals in 24/7. Even me and my business partner got into it about that, a little bit about our facility in California. We just got, a tiny little operation going because he likes those racks. And I'm like, I was like, dude, you can look, I'm not against tubs because you can set up some tubs very, very nicely. Tubs come in all sizes. You know what I'm saying? And that's what I'm saying. You can use a tub, but if you're going to do it, you can still set it up. In some instances, you can set it up better than you can set up some of this other stuff. But, depending on what you have, you might not want to overcrowd. Like with this guy, I tried to put some plants in there with him, but he just knocks them over. And it makes it hard for me to deal with him because he's so big. But, when I move, he's out and about now. But when I move, he's going to get a room and a girlfriend. So, I'm just going to strip everything in the room and, redo the whole thing for him. And then all those guys will get 36-inch cubes back there. I hate, like, my house is up for sale now, and then, like, now I've gotten dud eggs from 3 different females, and I'm like, y'all couldn't wait?
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about you're playing right now, right? You're trying to move. What's that game plan for your next location? Because we were talking about it offline for a little bit.
So the goal is, if I can get the right property, is to open up a 420 bed and breakfast homestead / like private zoo type of deal. Because for people who don't know, I was a chef for about 13 years. So that's the goal. Within that, like I said, the private zoo thing, I want to, obviously my main focus will be, mainly reptiles and amphibians. I'm definitely going to be putting together some philo and some dendrobotids tanks. I was always a huge fanatic of dendrobotids growing up. What else? Obviously geckos. I want to get some more Europlatus for sure. See how that goes and what I'm able to get. But I'm really a venomous guy. That's really all I mess with, like snake wise. I've had all that other stuff. Like I said, when you import and things like that, like you see that stuff in abundance so much. Don't get me wrong. Like I love like Indo-Pacific tree boas. Like I love them. But I like a lot of obscure stuff like rat snakes, especially like king rats, Japanese rats, which are hard to find. Things like that. So if I could get some of that stuff, I definitely would. But cobras, definitely more cobras. I already got some stuff lined up on the way. Like I said, more geckos, probably some Fimbriatus for sure. And I got another guy who wants to partner up with me on the leaf tails. So he's talking about like getting a decent sized shed and doing conversion in there. So if that pops off, and I'll have maybe like a little extension. But yeah, mainly cobras, geckos, like I said, dart frogs. Trying to think what else I've really been kind of looking at. Boyega. I've always been a big Boyega fan. I've never kept them personally for myself. I've gotten them in, for clients. I'll treat them, try to get them feeding if I can, and then, get them out the door type of deal. And I sit on stuff too when I was bringing stuff in. Like it just doesn't come in and go out like some of these other guys. You know what I mean? Like they get it in on Monday. It's on final on Monday.
No, you want to make sure it's established.
Yeah, right. They're talking about this eating like a champ. You ain't even had that snake 15 minutes, and you ain't even opened the bag yet. But the ad is like eating like a champ. Eating like ain't eating like a champ. But yeah. So that I'm really digging this breeding these isopods and these red runners and these springtails. I never did bioactive. I guess what I used to do, I guess they would consider naturalistic, even though I kind of think, in my opinion, what people say bioactive is still naturalistic. Because when I think bioactive, I don't really think we can do bioactive indoors. Because when you think about outside, how many layers are beneath the ground, and all those layers matter. We can't repeat that. So but if you call it what you want, it works. It looks good. It's way better than some of the stuff you know, when you see
It's better than a paper towel.
it's better than a paper towel. An anaconda with a
Yeah.
dog dish you can't get in a paper towel. You know.
Yeah.
I would make another joke, but I ain't gonna say nothing. But yeah, so I'm getting into that, like, because I've never bred ice. I've bred roaches before, dubias, and I can't stand dubias. But these red runners are fun. Like, these things they breed like crazy, and the hotter it is, you know, the more they breed. Like, I went from like 200.
Oh, yeah.
I probably got 2,000 or 3,000 now, and I'm like 4.5 months in. I bought my springtails for the first time. It's funny because you see what we used to call roly-polies, potato bugs, like an isopod. Like, that's an isopod.
Yeah, those are pill bugs.
So anybody who's in Greenpeace, don't get mad at me. I messed up the ecosystem in my backyard because you can't find any of them now. And I got snail and slug colonies going for my my snail eaters when my snail eaters come in from Malaysia, and then for the Europeans too, right? As well.
Yeah.
And so I bought my springtails, but all my isopods. I think I started with like 30 isopods of all sizes I collected in the back. And so I want to keep that going when I move, because now I remember I was showing you, now I've got like 5 tubs of isopods and springtails, is when I had like hundreds of them and thousands of springtails now. So, you know, definitely if anybody needs any of that stuff, if you want like some locally harvested bread, like all, you know, these things eat great in here. And if you want any of that stuff, you know, for the low, let me know. I will be selling red runners. I'm telling you, if you haven't used red runners, or you don't, or if you have, you should go back to red runners. Like,
my chauffeurs love them.
Fuck crickets, man. Anthony, I know you breed crickets. You know what? Out of all the stuff I bred, I could never get crickets to go. I don't know what it is. I think they just hate me because I hate them so much. I hate crickets. I hate them.
They more work than any animal I keep, man. I was looking through my bins last night, up till 1 o'clock in the morning, dealing with these fucking crickets, man. Like, it's not worth the money they cost. I could get 1,000 of them for fucking $15 from Josh's Frogs.
Yeah,
$15.99, 3/4-inch crickets. To go through all this, and the only reason I breed them, in all honesty, is because I keep mad different sized lizards, right? So I know all life phases, if you will. When I buy them, it's hard to just, it doesn't even matter, man. It is a pain in the ass. And if you got the means to deal with 1 or 2 sizes, you're absolutely better off buying crickets for the price of them than you are breeding.
Yeah, see,
this shit is.
I definitely recommend for you, if you need all sizes, I definitely would go with the red runners. I mean, it's right now, it's so, because I'm just getting to the point where, because like I still have to buy feeders sometimes. Like sometimes I have to go drive an hour to the pet store and either get dubias or crickets in between feedings, or I have to order them from where I got my stuff from, because I don't have the feeding sizes that I need. So I've been separating them into bins. And people are like, oh, don't leave food in there longer. I mean, I have so many. There's constantly food in my bins. Like, I don't have any pests or anything in there like that. Like, there's constantly potatoes, carrots, rice, you know, apples, purple cabbage, like constantly in all of my cleanup crew. They're constantly eating and growing. Then I have them, you know, every size you can think of, but I don't have them in abundance, and it's such a pain trying to catch like 12 or 13 to divide them. It takes me like 30 minutes to get them. You know what I mean? Like, it's so annoying just trying to shake them off in the cup, and then you got to kind of tilt it and let the little ones kind of get them out, and then get the bigger ones into another cup, like, because I know I don't have as many as I need in there. So I'm just but I can see it. I'm like, oh, in like 1 week, and like one more week, I'm gonna have like, you know, so many of the right size, and it won't take me as long to get them. Like, I'm getting to that point where I'm like, I could feed. For the most part, I could feed like generally most size frogs and lizards with what in 4 months with what I've got here, and I've started 2 new colonies with this from this colony. I mean, these things breed like nobody's business, man. My homie was telling me, he was like, bro, you just wait. He's like, wait till you hit your 6th month. He was like, you're gonna need like 2 or 3 more bins, like big bins. He's like, and they love them.
People have never heard a bad thing about them other than they could live in your house, right? Like that's the only thing. But truth be told, I tell people this all the time. I can't say too what my wife hears me, she'll kill me. But I pulled my time and found like 15 fucking hissing cockroaches behind my dryer.
Yeah, I get them every once in a while. I see one every once in a while. I mean, you always see crickets.
Shit.
You know, you always see it. So every once in a while, I'll see one. But they're not light sensitive, so they'll be out in the day. They're pretty easy to catch. Like they come out, and when they're hungry, they definitely come out. Like if they think, especially if you got kids or dogs or anything like that, you're gonna see them because they're gonna come out.
Oh yeah.
Might try.
But yeah, dude, it's been worth it for sure. And I honestly, at first, I was like, damn, these roaches are gonna kick. So you're telling me I can't breed roaches? And then it took off because like the first few egg cases, the temperatures they themselves have to get the environment right with all the frass, and it kind of gets the humidity where they need it and where they like, because then you'll notice they only lay like in between certain layers, and like your back layers and your front layers, you don't see anything back there. And so like there's a thing, if I were going there and show you and I move this piece, you're gonna see like pockets with like 60 eggs in every pocket, and there's like 40 babies in every egg. Dude, they're crushing dubias in the breeding market. Like there's so many in here. From what I've removed in 3 other bins, it didn't even put a dent in what I have in this big bin. And like every day that I go in there, you know, because you see the tiny ones, so you know that new ones, and they're in the way it's like 3 to 4 weeks they hatch, and you keep they start like that, and then they get like, if you need big stuff, yeah, you can do it. And you're going to have an abundance of male. I have so many, like, dude, I'll probably start selling males for feeders because I have so many males. Like so many males. Now the males, they do flicker a little bit, but they can't climb unless it's a rough surface. So basically all these projects, I just want to like extrapolate all of them when I move. You know, I want to expand on all of them, even if I don't sell to anybody. You know, so like I said, I want people to come in because I'm charging you like $700 to $1,000. So I want to take you like through my whole process. You know, from the food to, you know, what's going on the property. Everything is farm to table. You know, it's 420, so everything has to come off the land. So, you know, everything that we do, try to get it interactive. Maybe have them feed some roaches to some of the lizards. You know, things like that. Like that's the end game for me. I'm an old man, I think, anyway. So
well, that's cool though. You're offering them an experience, so that's what's up. I like that.
Awesome.
So that's it. Yeah. But yeah, I definitely recommend and they don't burrow red runners, so you don't have to worry about that. Like, you know, with dubias,
no, they just fucking run.
Yeah, but the geckos, they love them, dude. As soon as
my strophirs love that shit.
They won't. I have to bring the dubias to them. And I'm not about that. Like I gotta put them there in a cup and the fuck. That's one thing I wanted to say. I forgot. I got sidetracked. We were talking about breeding dumb animals. Is I had this cobra, the first cobra I ever got, like 14, 15 years ago. It's albino. It was a monocle albino. The guy brought it to me, and this thing wouldn't eat live prey. It would not eat live prey. It would not eat the mouse, and it embarrassed me in front of my friends one time. He was like, bro, you got one of the deadliest animals in the world, and you got to hand feed that shit? He said, I don't even want to keep the pictures of this on my phone. It's like, he come over, he brought me the tank for it when I first got it, him and his son, and he's taking pictures of it, and he's sending it to his cousin, and his cousin's like, it's a cobra. It's like, he's reading me the text message. He's like, so the messages is like, he's like, what website is that? He's like, no, I'm at my homie's house. He's like, oh, I told you about messing with them crazy white boys. He's like, nah, he ain't white. He said, oh, man, you better get out of there then. He said he's going to be even worse. But yeah, he came back over, and I went to feed it, man. I threw a mouse in there. You know, I'm ready to see the show. and she went back in the hide. So I'm like, what? So I took it out, put it back in. She wouldn't come out. I'm like, all right, man, like, fuck it, let's go, because we're getting ready to go see a movie. So I stunned it, threw it in there. She shot out of the hide and ate it. Like, I was so embarrassed. And that's when I started thinking, like, man, like, we're breeding animals like this now? So that's like, typically, most likely, she wouldn't even have envenomated, like, at all. And I mean, obviously, snakes are smart. They're way smarter than we give them credit for. Even when we're like, snakes are smart, they're still smarter than we think. You know, and they know, and they definitely know what's what. But yeah, if you're breeding animals in a rack system, you better believe your shit's dumb. You know, you can't, you're keeping a 20-foot retic, a 15-foot retic in a cage. This is a 6x2x2. And, you know, he's not a huge snake. And there's room in there. In my opinion, it's not enough. But you keep a 13, 14-foot retic or a berm in that, you know, you got it stacked in your facility like that. That's crazy to me.
They never get the problem solved. They've never in their lives had to get in or out of a situation. I mean, I guess we're definitely intellectually, we're different than animals are, but they face the same issues, you know? They still need to eat, they need to sleep, they need shelter, they need to do certain
everybody
things.
does the same thing. We're all doing the same thing in a different form. So it's like, why would you not, the more you stimulate, the more you provide, that's a part of a breeding program. If you provide a great environment, they're going to want to breed readily. And you're going to see a difference in your animals. Like, if I were breeding geckos, right? Oh, I am, I guess. Say if I were. But if I were someone who were starting a breeding program, or just say for what I got going on, like, I do have a female up there, the oldest female that I have, and she's odd for her species. She looks like a male. She takes after a male. She's covered in spikes. And you don't see that a lot with the Ibanawi. But if I, like, so she's not the best feeder. Like, she'll eat, but the other ones, like, as soon as I put the roaches in there, you know, they're on it. You know what I mean? They don't waste any time. But her, like, you know, some days I wonder if she eats, you know, or if the other one, the other female that lives in there with her gets everything. And, you know, until, you know, obviously when they poop, you know, that's how I'll know. But some days, you know, I've seen, it's been days where I know that she wasn't. So she's like, she'll eat, but she's not as, like, enthusiastic about it as the other geckos that I have. So I pay attention to that. Yeah, she's cool looking. She's got all these spikes, and that's why I bought her. But you see, in the dog world, I probably would talk shit about that breeder. In a way, not necessarily. It could be like on a soft note, or I could just bash them. Like, they sold me some shit. But in the reptile world, it's kind of hard to do because there are no breeding programs. And I know that was the only one that he hatched like that. So, you know, and that's what I'm saying. Like, you're not getting an abundance of animals because of how they're being bred. Maybe he would have gotten 5 or 6 more like that. But because of that, maybe that is the issue. I don't know. The only way I can find out is to breed that animal. So, do I breed that animal one time and see what her offspring do? Yeah, one time. I could just say, fuck it, and not do anything with her. Put her by herself and, you know, just let her live. But, you know, if I wanted to breed her, like, I got to see what she throws. And you got to prove, the whole part of your breeding program is to test and prove what you're doing. If you can't,
Just work the observation,
right?
You know,
because you can do something like, you see dogs that look great all the time. Like, there was a presser back in the day. He's long dead now. His name was Jakar, and I always bring Jakar up because he was one of my favorite presser canarios of all time. He was a scatterbred dog, but he was awesome. He was awesome. If you see the pictures of him when they first brought him over here, he was awesome in 2001. Nice black brindle dog. I mean, everything, the ear cut. I mean, he was just awesome dog. But Jakar could never reproduce himself because he was so scatterbred. He was a great looking pheno, but his RNA and his genotype didn't pass on. So when they started breeding him, he sired like 2,000 puppies. You know, that's a good amount of litters, and not all of them were documented. So the puppies, none of them ever came out like him. Like, they might have the physique, but they didn't have the head, or they had the head, they didn't have the physique. They had the temperament, but they didn't have the body. They had the body, but they didn't have the temperament. So, you know, every once in a while, you might get something close, but then it couldn't throw itself because it was scatterbred to something else. So you don't really hear a lot of people talking about that dog in particular. He's no Sandokan for sure. And I know that name means nothing unless you know anything about Precious. But
I have no clue what the hell you're even saying.
But if you know about Precious, Sandokan is a badass dog. You know what I mean?
Okay. Yeah.
He was a badass dog. So he's on a but yeah, so you got to pay attention to that. Do you want to breed those animals that are kind of hesitant? Or if you do, you got to prove it and see. Maybe it's just a hiccup. Maybe it was just that one. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it skips a generation. That's why you see when they'll breed, you can breed 2 het animals together and get nothing but het animals. You might not get anything that's visual because as much as you think, we're not God as much as we like to play. And if you really wanted to play God, then you should also be tampering with the habitats as well, because that is a part of what these animals need. So like I said, breeding these animals in rack system, I would say that you're not a god, you're a demigod. You're half and half. You ain't got the power of a god. You're a demigod. That's why, you're cutting corners like that. You don't have the full power because all of that stuff comes into play. It is going to determine the intelligence and the IQ of your animals by how they live. If you don't need to learn math, why would you?
Facts.
If I live in a city like DC, New York, LA, certain cities, you don't need a car. I may not ever know how to drive, but I could still be a millionaire and be more successful than you because, one's success is measured differently. Some people think waking up, going to a factory every day for work, pushing the button all day is success. And if that's what they like, then that's how it's measured. And I also see a lot of that as well in the animal community where success is being measured, by being differently. But I'm like, bro, you're dealing with live animals. Success should pretty much fall under a standard of if this is what the animal was going on in the wild, then it needs to be replicated as much as possible. But there is nobody to hold us to those standards. There is no group. Yeah. There is no person that is. People promote it individually, but our leaders are not like, yo, this is what y'all need to be doing because they're looking at us, and we're gonna do this. I got put on with the guy, one of the curators at the Cincinnati Zoo. I can't remember his name. And this is on one of my older pages. I can't keep a page for shit on Instagram. And he even told me he was all for the registry. He said, bro, I'm trying to do something like that myself. And like you said, and he brought up, like, we know some of the gecko people do it. Some of the Morelia people, keep their records. He's like, yeah, but we need to get, all of that collectively, together. Yeah. And he was like, bro, I would love to. He said, but I can't even get these guys at the zoo who get paid to do it to write a name in the book, in the stud books. And, and it was crazy because I had set up out of my own pocket. I didn't ask anybody for any money. I had an app. I had a website, all this stuff up running that was basically, it could have been the Instagram for reptiles and amphibians. But I wasn't going to run it like Facebook where you have all these different ambassadors. And people still ask me about it. And I'm not opposed to helping someone else maybe kind of get it running. At this point, I don't know if it's something I want to be that, I could do some behind the scene things, but the app, I had it set up where you could directly communicate with each other, right then and there. It had, all your topics, your blogs, your breeding, your vlogs, different species, but you had to ask to form a group. The structure is very important. It wasn't just like Facebook. You want to start a group, you start a group. And then as soon as somebody says something that you don't like, or you say something someone doesn't like, they're kicking you out the group. There wasn't going to be any of that. I was going to have a team that helped me run the app. It's private, so everybody's not even invited. Yeah, I said it. Everybody doesn't like me. I don't like everybody else. That's what it is. So I can't have people, who are going to try to come in and sabotage things because they don't like me. I'm like, listen, I'm here for the animals, so let's just keep it about that. And that's another thing. Like people will, if they can't get any dirt on you, man, they'll start talking about your families. And I've seen it, and it's crazy. I'm like, dude, this is crazy. I never thought that this would happen. But yeah, man, I pitched that app to everybody. And Dylan was the only person that let me come on and talk about it. I pitched it to everybody. To everybody. None of those guys what they were trying to do is figure out who I was getting my information from so that they could go back on their podcasts and be like, yo, I got this information, like they got it. So, that's a big thing, because in the reptile community, being number one is very important. The first, we're so that's why I said we've got this competition. Like, oh, I did it first. So and so did it back then. They did it back then, and he, I was already doing it. And like, does that even? Okay, that's great. But who's doing it the best now? Whose animals are thriving the most? Who's reproducing animals that are hitting every time? Like, bro, shut the fuck up. You can't say anything. You're breeding animals with a neurological issue on purpose and selling them. Don't talk to me about breeding programs and breeding projects. I'm sorry.
What happens in the gecko world too? Even like the super caps and cappuccinos. It cats that breed the super caps telling people that only they are responsible enough to do it, and no one else should do it because they have all these problems, right? Like, I'm doing it, but you really shouldn't because they have all these problems. But yet you're doing it, right? Like, so you're not allowing anyone else to come in and try to do it better.
Anthony, I'm glad you said that, but I hate that you have to say that. And, because some people know that I import some of these guys. And I've had people come into my DMs, like when I started I imported some Halmahera pythons and some Classileptis over here. And that got me in a lot of trouble. I don't want to say even trouble. It got some beef started. But I'll get into that. But these guys that I really don't even know that well came into my DM. These are like big names in the scrub world telling me I need to stop importing Halmahera pythons until they can get the snake established. So no one's allowed to do this except for these guys. I've had it happen more than once. Like, bro, why do you keep importing those things over there? They're not even, so-and-so hasn't got them established. Like, I don't give a shit who's got them established. I know what I'm doing. Like, I've been importing, and that's why most of you guys don't know who I am, because I never needed them. You know what I mean? I was getting all my own stuff. So I'm like, I'm going to keep bringing over what I want over. I have clients that want things, and if I can establish them, I'm going to establish them. And so, something happened with the Classileptis. MJ got involved because, he's got to be involved in everything. And the only reason I'm saying that name is because I've said it openly before. But he got involved. I helped this guy, Marcel Hawkins, breed Classileptis, which is a type of scrub python from the Moluccan Island. Hadn't been done in like 20 years in captivity. And, so I've been over there and I had my notes. And my people can come in here and tell you this shit. I spent 11 months on the phone with this guy. He called me up after Lawrence in the UK. I guess Lawrence, I don't know what happened with Lawrence, but he just kind of disappeared from the trade. No one heard from him for a while. I don't know if anyone has still been in contact with him. But he was another guy who was able to breed scrubs outside of Dan Malari and a couple other people on a consistent basis. So he contacted me. He said someone sent him my way. They said that I had bred scrubs a few times before and that I could help him out. Little did I know he was kind of playing me because we looked alike. So, he came at me with this whole black reptile keeper BS. And anybody who knows me knows I'm not into that shit. I'm just a guy who likes animals. I'm not in any group. You know what I mean? Because if I can't run it, I'm not going to be in it anyway. And I'm pretty sure people can see that I'm not white, even though I'm mixed and I keep reptiles, so I don't need to tell them that I'm a black reptile keeper. So, but, you got people darker than me. I'm pretty sure they know you're black. But anyway. But, so I helped him for 11 months over the phone. Like, over the phone, on Instagram. I got the text messages and the screenshots to prove it. And then, he told me what he did wrong, and I told him what he needed to do, what he needed, where to fix it, and I guaranteed that he would get a clutch. I have the screenshot of him thanking me on Instagram. You're like, bro, I would have never been able to do this. These white boys were trying to sabotage me. Us brothers got to stick together. They're this, they're that. They're telling me the wrong, and they were. And I don't necessarily know if it was because if you saw him, you would think that, he's mixed. He doesn't look like the typical black person, I guess, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? So, you know, you could definitely like, because when I saw him, like, yeah, he does kind of look South American. Because he was telling me, you know, he's from Brazil and all these other places, and it was a total BS. It was a lie. And so he was right. He was playing defense to get me to help him, you know, and he didn't even have to do that.
Oh, yeah.
He didn't even have to do that because I'm about the snake. And so I guaranteed if he did the things that I told him, you know, I let him see my notes. He had a clutch. He had a clutch of 17. And yeah, she dropped 17, man. After he thanked me,
God damn.
that motherfucker acted like he never talked to me before. I hit him up. I had a reptile channel back then. There's a few guys. Father Blue's first interview was on my original reptile channel. I had 2 interviews with him. I have 3 total, but the first 2 were on my original reptile channel. This was...
Yeah, I remember you sending me that.
Yeah, this was like 4 years ago. And so I had a few other guys that were on there with me when I started that channel. But yeah, I asked him, like, yeah, bro, you know, you should come on the channel. Like, I didn't ask him for a snake. I didn't ask him for nothing because I was importing this. I didn't need that stuff. And like I said, I was hot. I kept hot. I was living in Colorado at the time. Like, you know, I don't live there now, so I can say this. But, you know, I kept my cobras there. You know, I wasn't, but I couldn't give them. I tried to give them to people. The zoo just don't take animals because you take them there. You know, I already know that because I volunteered at the zoo. If you can't find anybody to take your stuff, what am I? If I let it go, then that makes me irresponsible. I let a cobra go in the DMV area. Come on, you know what am I supposed to do?
Oh yeah. Oh.
You know what I mean? So, but yeah, you know, he was like, no, you know, bro, I don't have time, but I'll hit you up later. Dude, within 15 minutes, him and Brandon Wheeler were live. We're live. I'm like, you told me you didn't even like dude. You were calling him all kind of derogatory statements on the phone with me, and now you're doing a podcast with him. And then that's when you know, so I got furious. And then even some of my clients and my friends who knew that I helped him were talking to him on Facebook, and they were sending me screenshots, and they were like asking him, like, yo, who helped you? Or did you just get lucky? And he was like, yeah, bro, I just got lucky. And they would send me I got the screenshots in my laptop. You know what I mean? And so I confronted him about it, and he tried to act like he didn't know who I was, all this craziness. So then I started putting the screenshots out. And so then that's when MJ got involved. And they were like, yeah, bro. Yeah, they were trying to clown me. Like, yeah, bro, you're just doing that because you're broke and da-da-da-da. I'm like, you must not know who you're talking about. Like, bro, you... Like, dude, Brandon Wheeler, I had offered Brandon Wheeler like almost every... And Nick Mutton, you can even ask Nick, I had offered them like 4 class Leptis when I was bringing them in. You know, and they were like, bro, the prices are just too high for me. Like Brandon was like, no, you can quote me on this. He was like, nah, I would, bro, but I'm getting my basement redone. And I can tell you the same here. And you can go watch his channel and see that's when he was getting his basement done. And I can send you a picture of me holding class Leptis in my hand the same year, the same month, same year that video came out. And they're like, nah, bro, you're broke. You're just jealous because you didn't do it. Like, yeah, they were clowning me. And so, yeah, and it's not the first time. It wouldn't be the last time MJ would come around and say some stuff. You know, and so me being me, you know, I'm from the East Coast. Anthony, you know what's up. I made a video about that mofo on my channel, on my last channel that I had that was booming. Man, it was the most hilarious thing you could ever see in your life. And I hate to say that I did that, but then at the same time I don't. Because here's the thing. There is toxicity. People are like, oh, you're just contributing to the toxicity. And in a sense, you're right. But they're so used to getting away with it and no one doing anything about it because he's gotten mad at people for not coming on his show and made videos making fun of them because they didn't want to come on the show.
Yep. Yeah.
I mean, I can't stand the kid.
And
I can't stand.
And you know, it's like I said, but people who didn't know what I'm like, bro, there was a whole lot that went into that. Like I didn't even know this guy. He was clowning me, like, you know, telling me, like, bro, you don't even know my situation. And then somebody gave me, then I found out everything I needed to know about him. I'm like, bro, like I'm not, I could say some, I do know you stole snakes from someone, and I've said that openly, so I'll say that again. I don't care what they say because the guy, I have a screenshot of that. The guy saying, "Hey, now, bro," and then they threatened my family after he didn't pay me for the animals. But this is the guy they love, and I'm like, bro, this guy is going around just talking to people crazy, and you're allowing that. Like, how can we allow that? What part of the reptile community is that? But you're not just going to do that to me or to my friends or people like that. Like, I'm going to say something because I feel like it's my responsibility, because I've known women that have gone on his show and they're like, "Yo, I really felt bullied, and I would never do anything for him again." This is somebody who can defend herself, and he's talked so much shit about me. And most of it's BS because he doesn't know me, which is funny because I'm like, bro, like, you just making up stuff because you don't have anything to say because there's no dirt to be had on me. So you're just like, "Oh, I would never let him on my show." Bro, if I come on your show, it's going to be the most viewed podcast you ever get. I guarantee that. And it's probably going to be the last one you ever get. So, because when I get to talking and start, bro, look, man, there's things that have happened in the reptile community that are so foul. And I told Jason, I was like, bro, I got no problem talking about this stuff because, we saw what happened with Samson and all those, and nothing happened to him. All they did was like, "Oh, don't go to the reptile shows anymore."
I heard he still breeds snakes.
Nothing stopped. Nothing stopped.
Yep.
Whatever he's doing, yeah.
If I was running,
He's still doing his shitty stuff.
If I was running an organization, that dude would have I would have spent, because like I said, if I had this set up, we would have had millions in the bank. You better believe I would have went through his whole facility. Like, bro, like, now you're out of here. You know what I mean? You're out of here, bro. You're done. You'll never see another animal again. Like, I'm going to pay them to prosecute you. Like, but instead I got people going around talking about I got a hidden agenda and I used to work for PETA and don't trust me. And I'm like, bro, I campaigned for PETA for 6 months. Like, if you were smart, you should be asking me what I did while I was with PETA. Instead of,
Yeah, what information can you give me, right? So we can use it against them.
Anybody knows,
some shit like that.
Anybody knows. I told my homeboy that, who was there with me. He was like, bro, we were 14. I'm like, I know. He's like, they're mad at you about when you were 14? He was like, what kind of reptiles y'all? What kind of reptile shit is going on? I said, yeah, bro, they were trying to clown me, man. Like, telling people don't listen to me. And I'm like, bro, we need structure. We need this, or we're gonna lose it. Like, we're gonna lose it if we don't get this.
No other hobby that involves animals. I'm Italian, so my family, we've always been big into different types of animals, right? Like even pigeons, right? Like pigeons, homing pigeons. Nothing with it, and they are so much more structured than the animal world is, dude. You could get pedigrees on fucking homing pigeons, bro. Homing pigeons, let alone the horses, and maybe there's not so much so with the rabbits my people used to eat and grow and shit, but there was still a little structure. I don't know how to explain it, man, but it wasn't like a fucking free for all where you could just
right. Yeah, no, it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate, man, that it's like that because, like I said, as long as we've been keeping and breeding, you'd have thought that we would already have. We would be in a so much better place if we could come together on that. And like I said, just put your differences aside. Like, and I've even said that. Like, look, like I said, I don't hate USR. I don't know Phil, so I can't have anything against him personally. I don't care. He could be a great guy. I don't know. But what I do know is that there's been no evolution, and I don't want to pay, and I don't even like selling people animals for a certain amount of money because I'm just like, bro, get insurance, and then they never do it, and then I'm like, if something happens or if you buy something, like, dude, get the insurance. Talk to your homeowner's insurance and tell them, like, yo, look, I got this animal in here, and he's an. Amy Benzie was able to do that with State Farm. She's got all her Amazon basins and all the equipment insured. She's got a private broker. She talked to him and she's told him, and he did it for her. So people, like, talk to your people, and if they're not going to do it for you, do it for yourself, because you really want to be begging for money on GoFundMe when your house burns down or floods or not. But God forbid anything like that happen to you. But that stuff does happen. So, like I said, I had all this stuff like in the play. I couldn't get signatures, like I said, because of that, because I had this whole thing with MJ and them going on. And I'm like, I feel that's why I really felt I had to defend myself. Because, I'm talking about being in defense of the animals. Well, if you're upset enough for animals, he's letting these people talk shit about him and he's not saying anything. So how do we know he's going to say anything about it in legislation? But, I understand more so how this works, kind of growing up in the midst of, like, I've had family who's run for government. I had an uncle who was governor in the city and things like that. So I know a little bit about it, enough to know how it works. And I'm like, well, you got to understand, like we were saying earlier, is that once something gets on the books, it can be brought up at any time. It's if PETA is writing a check to get a bill put in place for $200,000, $300,000, we got to be prepared to write one for double that. It may be even triple. If USARK only brought in $1 million last year, you're giving $600,000 of that, plus Phil's salary, that's another $100,000, and whatever other expenses they may have. I don't really know how the money is spent. I don't even know what they put on the paper. So how far is $1 million really going to go? Whether if you had 20, 30, $40 million in an account, and then you had a whole team that's making like $100,000, $200,000 a year, you still got millions of dollars left over from your registration. Because think of how many, like we said, think of how many litters dogs have versus versus the breed. And then you have species of reptiles, and then how many clutches they have and how many are being clutched. Because, some reptiles can have up to 50, 60 babies. If you're registering the ones that need to be registered, and then they're paying $5 or $10 per animal on that top of that register. Dude, it's 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, $100 million a year business. That's the kind of stuff you need to combat the government. Not, hey, there's a bill, donate to USARK. Here comes so-and-so telling you to do this. Like, nah, bro, you wouldn't even need to say that shit. You wouldn't even need to say it. Because you're already... And here's another thing. Insurance companies will go to bat for you. You think that if you don't have 50,000 people paying, let's just say, $600 a year into an insurance company, that's $30 million a year. You think they're going to want to lose that money? It's simple for them to make that because it's just a math equation for them in the system. Now they're $30 million richer based off of your insurance claim. Yeah. You think that they're not going to pay for your lawyers or send an extra lawyer down there? Win or lose, they still came to your aid. They say, there's a certain group of people that says that another certain group of people keep killing them. Well, I'd say the same thing. Well, get insurance. And then the insurance companies will call them and tell them to stop shooting you. You got to stop shooting them. Can't keep shooting them, man, because every time you do, we got to pay out. It's the same, it's the same thing, man. It's the same thing. They will be like, bro, we're not about to lose $30 million without a fight. Yeah. And if you had more, you could have, and I've said this as well. I've never had to be the only one. You have more than one dog registry. So USARK, so someone over here, this guy over here. Why is this shit not international? You're trading animals international. You're going back and forth. You're talking to them online. The international people were more about what I was doing than anyone over here. They loved, like, bro, are you going to do that in the UK? Can you do it in Australia? Are you going to be, I'm like, well, if I can get it established here, then it will be a lot easier for me to establish over there. I was like, I'm not over there, but I can just appoint guys who are interested to handle the, like, why is there not like a chapter in like every 10 states? Like you have USARK Florida. Why is there not a USARK Oregon or a US? And if there is, people let me know. But I don't see them. All I know is USARK Florida, USARK. Why do we not have an international reptiles keeper association? Because we're all experiencing the same things. The amount of money is that you could write a check any legislator will be happy to take. Because, and this is a joke that I've made, and it's funny, but it ain't funny. But when they go in there and say stupid stuff like they breed their dogs 29 times a year. The females have 29 litters a year, one female. And you hear them, they say stuff like that. If you go and watch the meetings, they be reading it. It's not that they don't know that. It's that that's what PETA wrote. And since you took that check, you got to say what's on that paper. You know what I mean? That's why I say you got to go, oh, how much did they give you? All right, go ahead and give them 500,000. Look, AKC's done it before. In the 90s, they were trying to ban cropping ears, the cosmetics for canines, cropping ears and docking tails. And AKC was like, nah, bruh, we're not. We like that over here, so we're going to keep that. A lot of people are still against it to this day. But they were the same groups that attack us were taking AKC to court. Most people don't even know about this case because the only thing AKC did was write a nice little check, gave it to their lawyer, they gave it to the legislators, and then they never talked about the shit again. So it's been done. They do it all the time. When you hear about certain breeds that are on the chopping block, if it's an AKC dog, AKC's not, unless it's just something horrible going on, AKC is not they're not gonna get rid of the dog. They might make you change the name like they did from the American Pit Bull Terrier to the Amstaff, but it's still ultimately, it's still the same. It's the same dog because all Amstaffs came from Pit Bulls, but they wouldn't register it because of, the name implied that it was a fighting dog. It was a game dog. So
Okay.
that structure, AKC has provided the show. They've linked with the insurance companies, and they've got the registration. So they're giving you these events that promote who's got the best crested geckos, who's got the best leaf tail, who's got the best ball pythons, and you can still have your expos. But here's the thing: do you really need an expo? You buy your shit online anyway. Do you really need to go to the expo? At this point in time, do we really need the expos?
Yeah, I mean, you got online expos now, so you don't even need to go.
The online auctions,
I think it's just more. It's just more of an experience now. It's just more of an experience now. That's all.
And it's so funny. I've been doing, like I said, since '88. I've only been to maybe three reptile expos, and I'm not even sure about the third one. I don't really know. I can't remember. I feel like I did, but I'm not sure. But the two that I know for sure were just in the last 3 years. One was in Colorado, and it was basically a ball python show. And then
Most are.
And then the other one was where I am, and I went there to see if I could find some venomous, and there was none there. I drove an hour, went in, paid, walked around, and I walked right the fuck out. And I looked at the lady and I was like, man, y'all should really give me half my money back. I was like, that was like the worst thing I've ever seen. So yeah, it was just like, it was like everything that you're sick of seeing. And it wasn't even that big of a space. And I was just like, wow, I guess most people aren't really coming to the shows like that anyway. But yeah, most people are buying stuff online. I think we're spending a lot of effort in places that don't need to be spent. Now, I do think if we had a registration and we started doing shows and things like that, I think those type of things, every once in a while, maybe you could have like this yearly or annual, kind of how they do Tinley, or this extra big expo, maybe twice a year. Like everybody gets together in like certain locations and they switch it up every year, not the same location. So that way you get to connect with different people. Something like that.
So
go ahead.
Well, what are your thoughts on that? Was it the Gold Standard Gecko Club? Have you ever heard of that?
Anthony was talking about that. I know that there are things like that exist privately, and I appreciate those things, and we need more of that. I wish more people would do that. Oh. But I guess when you call yourself, like Gecko is in the name. And I guess everybody's background is different as well. If you're really hardcore about geckos or whatever it is, then it only makes sense that you would sit down and that you would formulate a plan for yourself. Because like I said earlier, like we all agreed, why would you not want to put out? Because I want some of this stuff this is really for me. I'm not doing this for you. I'm not breeding for you. You get the stuff that I don't want. And it doesn't mean it's bad. It's just the stuff I don't want or it doesn't fit what I'm doing. Yeah. So, because I need to make better animals and I can't do that. Or, if I know you, like I said, I'll play stuff with you, but we need more of that. Like if the gecko, if every species of gecko, snake did that, and then you had this main centralized registry, that would make it so much easier for me to do my job. because then all you got to do is zip drive me all those files, and then the way I had it set up on my app, I had a six letter number code. In order to get into the app, you put that code in. And like I said, the app worked in real time. You could have your profile. You could set up breeder profiles like, hey, I'm looking for this in this area or worldwide. Could somebody want to loan me this? Like everything you could think of, buy something, was all there. And then listen, it was free. I didn't even charge you to use it. It was free. I was paying for everything. But the services for the papers were there. If you wanted to buy papers, it was no obligation. But if you wanted them for me to do individual registration for you, it was there. I had the printout of how it looked and everything. And I had people hit me up, but it was just never enough. You know what I mean? It would just be like 5 or 6 guys, or people would come and they'd look at the app. I know one guy that worked for Brian. I can't remember. I think his name might have been Brian too, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe Ryan. There's a lot of Brians and Ryans in the industry. Yeah, there's so many. But he hit me up. He joined the app, and he was like, bro, like as soon as Brian, I think Brian might have been in Africa at the time. I can't remember. I know he was out of town. Maybe he was in Vegas. I can't remember. It doesn't matter. He was like, yeah, as soon as Brian comes back, I'm going to talk to him about this because, I think he would really like this. And, I really, even the guys at Nerd, Rob's creeping it real. I can show you an email from Jeremy Brassman between me, him, and Phil that Phil ignored. Jeremy wrote it with me and BCC'd it to Phil, and they ignored it. Because Jeremy was like, bro, he's like, you could tone your approach down a little bit. I'm like, bro, I've been trying to get a hold of you motherfuckers for 6 years. You can only put so much trash in a trash can before it's blowing all over the fucking place. You know what I mean? I started off real subtle, but now I am a little angry because this is stuff that we need. So, forgive me, forgive my angry passion, but, I've been emailing for a long time and got no response. I'm sorry. Like you ask for dollars, you ask for donations, but I can't talk to you. And, and so he was like, no, bro, I hear you. I told him one of the other guys at Nerd, Gio, hooked me up with this guy who was supposed to be a herpetologist. I talked to him on the phone for 45 minutes, man. He heard everything I said. I answered every question, every concern to the best of my ability. He said he's going to put me in contact with Phil. And this is all around 2020 to 2023 that all this was happening with all these people and these emails and whatnot. And this is also around the time that stuff with MJ was happening, and they were telling people not to listen to me.
Right.
So, as soon as they heard my name, as soon as they're like, no, they said, don't trust that guy. So they wouldn't listen to me. Yeah. So they wouldn't talk to me. He wouldn't respond back to any of the emails. And I'm like, bro, so I did another podcast, and I'm like, look, bro, this isn't personal. I don't know you. I don't want to get paid. Like, I probably make more money than you do. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want any of your money. I'm trying to help you make more money to fight legislation. There's enough money for everybody to get paid to do this, but they weren't trying to hear what I had to say. And it was sad. And so a lot of people started writing in the comments like, bro, like you and Dylan should just take over. Like, literally, there were comments under some of the videos like, bro, we would rather have you running this. Like, literally, I swear, people were like, we would rather have you running this because it sounds like, you're really going to get out there. Because, dude, back in the day, they used to be at every expo. And I only know that because I talked to people who I supplied so many expos. And I know people who would go there, and US Arc was always there. And they're like, now you don't even see them. And I know members who pay, and they're like, yeah, bro, no. He's like, nah, man, but it's just the presence isn't there like it used to be. And so even they're starting to get...
Yeah, they just have a booth.
I support the mission.
That's all they really do now.
Yeah, I support the mission, bro. Like, I always have. But I'm just saying in general, and it ain't just US Arc. We, as a community, if we pushed up on them, so we're not even doing it. Because if we pushed up on them, it would force them to do it. Just imagine if 10,000 people emailed them like they emailed for the ban bills, because the only thing those bills do are keeping the animals coming in. That's it. It's not stopping the abuse. It's not stopping the unethical keeping. All that goes together. And this is really, and this subject always comes up with me because, like I said, it's heartbreaking at times, man. I've lost sleep over this shit. As crazy as it may sound, is because I'm like, I know eventually they're going to take this stuff. And that's why I tell people all the time, like, honestly, we all should just get off social media posting our animals. If we're not going to organize, then, we need to disperse, because this is a record for them. They've already shown you that they will sell you out on these platforms. We've already seen that. You know what I mean? And, so it like I said, it's just, we're just lacking in so many ways. And like I said, it's upsetting. But there are a few people who want to do things. Like, I should have another podcast coming up with the snake therapy lady. So I guess you're going to be seeing me a lot more.
Who's that?
Shira, I don't know her last name, but yeah, she's been doing the thing with, like helping, taking snakes to different places, schools and things like that. And basically using them as form, to try to show people how, relaxing and calming they can actually be. And, just another way to break one of the stigmas. But yeah, dude, I'm all for beating legislation. I just, like, if people want to come together, I mean, look, I'll say this for anybody who sees this, like, if you get enough people together, I'll definitely help get it rolling. It's pretty easy to set up. I've already got the blueprint, and I would hope that more people would do it, because even though you have your AKCs and your FCIs, that's where the big thing happens. You have private breed clubs as well. So it's like the guys at Tiki's Gecko were a breed club, and the Gecko Exchange became a breed club for whatever you guys do. And so then, it starts there, and then you go to the big show. You know what I mean? Like, hey, these geckos are such and such and such certified. They've been through here. They've got paperwork coming off here. You can go to the website, type in their number, their pedigrees come up. You can see that they were not inbred, or when they were and why they were. You can see the whole program. Like, that's what we need. We need those databases, because, I mean, how are you going to promote this to the next generation? There's nothing to promote, rather than just go get a reptile. No, just go buy something. Because your average person, one, they're going to buy wrong anyway. They're going to buy wild caught, most likely, because it's cheaper, unless they've been educated. Now, obviously, I'm not opposed to buying wild caught animals, but, it's just not for everybody. You get an animal, and then a month later it's dead because you didn't know what to do. I've been there. I've spent hundreds of dollars on animals. You get them in, 2 weeks later, they're dead. 3 weeks later, they're dead. And you're like, man, you get discouraged and things like that, especially when you're in high school and you don't have a ton of money to always spend. So, but yeah, we can do better is my message, man. And, and then, like I said, all the backstabbing and some of the other craziness that has gone on. I mean, if I were to say what I could say and the right person were to see this interview, this would be the most viewed podcast in reptile history. And honestly, what it is does need to be said. And I think, Anthony, you probably don't know, because I haven't talked about this with you, but it's about a particular person who's no longer with us, and it's not Brian. But he was done very, very foul by his wife, and supposed to be the person he was mentoring.
Okay.
And it ain't what they've been telling people. And the only reason I am comfortable talking about it to any capacity is because I actually have text messages from this person's phone. And they're time stamped and they can't be faked. And they were sent to me by people who were really good friends with this person. And this was someone who was really about conservation and preservation. And this person, and I'll lead into some hints. This person was on the way to trying to open up his own zoo and doing things like that. And he was a friend of Brian's. So if you can put that together, the people who are watching this, but like I said, I wouldn't say that at all to any capacity if I could not send you and show you where this person was fearing for their life, talking to their friends. Like, so it ain't. And that's why that person's circumstances have never really been revealed. And it's unfortunate that, Brian is no longer with us. I'm not a big mutation guy, so I never really jumped into that part of what he did, but Brian did a lot for the industry, and I don't like all these big names, but everyone has played a part. You know what I mean? Whether I like them or not, everyone has played a part, but yeah, man, it's just very unfortunate how that person was done. And that information was given to the police, and the police just didn't seem to care about it. Unfortunately. But, I'm sure people could figure out who I'm talking about. But yeah, it was a nasty situation. But there's other things that have happened in Colorado where people's facilities have mysteriously caught on fire. Because, you've got this lady who does rodents over here and this couple that does rodents. And now they told me out of their own mouth, like, yeah, she set our facility on fire. And they caught her. That's the craziness. That's been going on for a while.
That's crazy.
You got companies that used to be together, like Bushmaster and Satu. They used to be one at one time. And then they split.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a whole lot of stuff that happens. Some stuff I ain't even going to mention because it's just perverse. But it happens. There's everything is in the reptile. What it do, bro? I'll tell you why a lot of people don't know a lot of this stuff. If you don't import or dealing with somebody who's importing directly, you haven't done anything overseas, or you're really not in the field, or you're so specialized in like trending animals, you're not going to ever get this information because it just doesn't fall that way. You know what I mean? For instance, there were 2 lists, and they'll kill me for saying this one, but I'm going to say it anyway. There are 2 lists. I could really Cat Williams this shit if I wanted to. There are 2 lists. There's 2 lists out there that animals are brought in under. You have the high-end list, and you have the shit list. Majority of the animals that come in here come off the shit list. So you're paying high dollar for the shittiest animals. I'll prove it to you right now. Who do you see that pisses you off? What country do you see when you see them with their animals? I don't care what animals are. Like, damn, why do they always have better stuff than we do? I bet you can guess. The
France?
UK, Europe in general. Everybody asks me that. Why do they have better animals than we do in the UK? I said, that's easy. Because their importers and exporters aren't buying off the shit list. They're buying off the high-end list, and that's why they have. And they don't even charge them that. If you look on the UK price, not even the UK, the European prices, you see how a lot of those animals are hundreds of dollars cheaper than we sell the same animals over here. And that's why their setups are just so much more elaborate. They have more money to put into their setups because they're not getting charged $15,000 for a python or for a boa or for, you know what I mean? If you spend $15,000 on a snake, hell, man, yeah, that animal, man, it's a lot of stuff better come with that animal. You know what I mean? Like, he better be able to do taxes. He better be able to clean up after himself. That's a lot of money for an animal, depending on what I'm doing, that I may not even be able to get insurance on. So what happens is when that animal dies, people used to, I've had scrubs and green tree pythons come in, and I've had to assist feed them for a year or 2 years at a time, and they never eat. What do? Eventually you get sick of taking care of that animal for 2 years, because the way I see it is, like, I stress this animal so much that he's probably never going to eat. So it's a lot to deal with. So that's another thing when people who go and just trying to dial back a bit to the importing, keep that in mind too, is that they may be telling you these animals are farm bred, but a lot of them are wild caught. So then you have to know that this animal, the process is like from the wild to whatever they have to throw it in to whoever there could be a middleman who will buy it, take it to the farm. They put it in their cages. Then eventually it goes out. It could be weeks to months. It goes back in the bag, in a box, in another box. And then it goes, and then it comes here, and hopefully a good wholesaler gets it and treats it right, that the animal may never eat for you. So if you are, even when you're importing and you're doing this, keep in mind, you spent this money. That money does not guarantee anything. Does not guarantee anything.
Holding that thing for the whole time.
And you may wait months to get animals, to get your order. You know what I mean? Because, like I said, especially when you're dealing with quotas and things like that, you're not just going to put an order in all the time and then the shit just comes. You know what I mean? And like I said, a lot of times they don't even have everything that you want. So, keep that in mind as well. It's a lucrative. It can be a very lucrative business. Like I said, we just need to get more into the health testing and stop being in denial, stop all this inbreeding. We need to start making better records of what we're doing. At the end of the day, those are the things that need to be done. I just wish I knew how to promote that stuff better.
It just takes time. That's all. But so we coming up on 3 hours, bro. So I said I got different things I gotta go do.
Hey.
And I know I gotta feed some geckos. I'm sure Ant gotta feed some geckos. I'm sure you gotta feed that damn cobra. But no, it was definitely a pleasure to have you on and talk about this stuff. Like, talking about like the other side of this hobby, what things we can do to improve. Hopefully people can take from that message right there. Just try to improve any way possible. Whether it's, making sure you get insurance for your animal. If you have only a few, talk to try to work something out with, most places do have some kind of like a herpetocultural society or something like that. I know we have one over here at least. So if not, start it up.
Yeah, we need more of that. We need to go link with those places and start doing new things for sure. And start, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Stay on your people. Stay on your these USARK people, man. Like, look, what can you do? What can I do to help you do? Other than just donations. We need more than just donations. You know what I mean? Like, we need legwork, like write them. Like, if we could get a mass amount of people to write them, you have to respond, but we need to start doing it. If they're not going to do it, then like you said, put it together yourself. Like, I'm with that message for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Start coming together instead of stop driving any wedges in between us. We need to start joining as a hobby, man. It starts with every page you interact with, right? Start building bonds, crossing species, learn, ask questions, stop. People are just so inept to drive a wedge in between relationships before you could ever agree with people. We gotta dead that shit. We gotta, build with each other and not push each other apart.
For sure.
Yeah, for sure. So where can everybody find you at, man?
Right now, where am I at right now? Now, let me look.
I know you're on Instagram.
Yeah, I just lost my page. Every time I get over 1,000 followers, they get rid of me, man. They don't like me on there for some reason. Let me see. I don't even know the name. It's Serpentor with an X and not an S. Serpentor. So XERPNTOR on Instagram. You'll find me on there. But like I said, if you go to Animals at Home, you can find interviews I've got on there. Battlebred Canines, I'm on there. There's another podcast I'm on. I'm not so proud of that one, so I won't. Don't worry about that one.
Well, I'll post all the links to the Animals at Home podcast, and then that one with Father Blue, that's not up anymore, is it? Or is it still up?
The third one that I have is actually on the Canis Codex, is actually on a dog channel that I run. That interview is up, and that's the one where he came back from Indonesia. That one is up. But the other two,
all right, so I'll post that on there as well.
If I end up doing another channel, what I could do, I could upload those. I still have them on my computer. But yeah. That's where you can find me there. Like I said, once I move, I'm trying to remotivate myself to get back into social media because I have so many people who are like, bro, you need a channel. You need to stay on it. Like, no matter what, like, we need, what you're doing. And I have an offer, but I'm not going to say anything right now just because it's still something that just kind of is being talked about. But it can be very good, and it will. And if it does happen, I'll be starting off on a bigger channel. So that way that may help me push the message, starting off with 20-something thousand followers, that are already there.
But
I appreciate you guys having me on, man. I don't do this shit for everybody. So, I don't care how many followers you have or don't have. Like, it's not about that. If I fuck with you, I'll come on.
Yeah, it's always about the message.
And talk to you.
That's all it's about.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Oh, for sure.
Talk to you.
All right, man. Y'all
yeah, definitely. Hey, you too, bro. Peace.